Hello, I'm Bill Gates, Chairman of Microsoft. In this video, you are going to see the world's most powerful spreadsheet, Microsoft Excel. Millions of people have moved up to the power of this graphical spreadsheet. We're going to show you why.
Welcome to Softvision for another software learning video. I'm Nigel Lovett-Turner. I'm going to act as the user in this presentation of Excel 4.0, the very latest version of Excel with lots of user benefits. Helen, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
And what are you doing with Microsoft?
I work at the training centre and I'm responsible for training Excel 4 amongst other products.
Right. And for how long have you been doing that?
I've been training now for 5 years, so I've had a lot of experience with the Microsoft products.
Great, yes. And what would you say were the special things about this Excel 4?
There are new features which are very exciting, and you can actually break them down into 4 areas. We're going to be looking at usability, so ease of use for both the experienced Excel user and the novice.
Right.
We'll be having a look at the analytical tools, for example, the ability to carry out what-if analysis quickly and easily. We'll also be moving on and exploring the presentation graphics, the 3D charts and the 3D rotator and the chart wizard. And then finally we'll be having a look at the data manipulation, for example, our data forms and our cross-tabbing for summary reports.
Excellent, yes. And for the new user, how would you describe a spreadsheet?
The spreadsheet really is made up of 3 core elements, and that will be the ability to input the data and analyse it, obviously, the ability to be able to express that analysis pictorially so you can communicate the information easily, and the third area is the data manipulation. So if I want to be able to store my data as records and then manipulate it by searching for specific records or sorting it in a particular order.
Good, thank you. And before we go on right into Excel, remember that you can look at this video in pieces. You don't have to look at it all. You can fast forward to the bit that you want to have a look at so that you can mix, select what you want, when you want, and revise pieces of the product as you want. So, should we go ahead?
Let's go ahead.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just double click on the Microsoft Excel icon. And we're in. Okay, so what we're looking at on the screen now is the empty sheet ready to input data. This will be provided for us every time we start a work session.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, so before we start inputting the information, let's take a closer look at some of the elements on the screen so that we're happy with what we're looking at.
Fine.
Taking it from the top, you'll see that we have what's known as the title bar, and its aim is to identify the application that we're working with. So obviously today it says Excel. Below this we have the menu bar.
Yes.
This contains the main menu options, and they're easy to access drop-down menus. Point and click. So if I come to edit, point and click, there's my drop-down menu.
Yeah,
Right, easy
so
to
now
access.
you can go down and look at those various
Surely
items,
with my
yeah.
mouse
Yeah.
I could come down and select the one that I wanted.
Great, yeah.
Alternatively, I can skim across the main menus and see which menu contains which options if I'm new, if
Yeah.
I'm just browsing.
There's a lot of information presented there. Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of information there, but we can pull up help at any stage, and we'll have a look at that a little
Great,
later.
okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Let's come back and examine the File menu in more detail. So here we can see that within this particular drop-down list, as with the others, that some of the choices have 3 dots after them.
I
The
see.
3 dots tell us that we're going to be offered the next stage. For example, if I click on the Open option, we're presented with the multi-choice form, which we call a dialog box.
Right. And then I can do further selections from
Certainly.
that, yes.
If, say,
Yeah.
for example, I wanted to pick up a file of my choice, I can simply come down and select the file that I want.
Yeah.
So I'm clear in my own mind that's the one I want. I could come down to this area here and choose which sort of files that I want to work with. And again, we'll come back and look at this in more detail a little later. And once I'm happy with my selection, I can say OK, and that will open the file.
Good. Okay.
All right. In this example, we're obviously not going to proceed because we'll look at file management a little later.
So I'm just doing the overview at the moment.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I just cancel down. Now, one thing I know you wanted to ask me about is
those keys.
Certainly.
How do I get it with the keyboard?
Right. Let me just refresh your memory. If we look in the File menu, we can actually come down and you'll see, for example, that next door to Open on the right-hand side, we have a Control F12 combination. Further down in the list, we have Shift F12, and then we have the F key or the function key on its own. So it's generally, the quick key access is generally a combination of a Control or a Shift key with the appropriate F key.
So that's, yes, that's super. You can get quickly to that. And also the underscores, what are those?
The underscore also are another quick means of access. Shall we actually come out and have a look at how we could use both of those methods? Right. Should we take the Control combination? So if I want to open, what was it, Nigel? Was it Control F12?
Control F12.
Fine. And these, obviously, as you use them, become very quick and easy to remember. Gives me direct access to that dialog area.
So second nature on doing those.
Surely. And obviously the most frequently used commands is a very easy way of accessing. With the underscore characters, if I'm used to working, say, in a non-graphical environment, often I will feel more comfortable initially using the keyboard for the majority of the time. So if I want to be able to access the menu through the keyboard, I can hold the Alt key down, and then if I want the File menu, I can strike the letter F, because that's the character that's underscored.
Yes.
If I then want to be able to open, I can simply press O.
Fine.
And again, we have the same result.
Yeah, so there are lots of ways of getting to the same information.
It's flexible, so the user can choose the one that suits them. Fine.
Good.
Shall we move on now and have a look at the graphical representation of the
Yes.
Fine. In the introduction, we heard that Excel 4 is a graphical spreadsheet. So what does that actually mean? Here is pictures, yes, certainly. And here we have a range of pictures. We call them icons.
Yes.
Now, each of these buttons has been carefully selected, and it's giving the graphical representation of some of the most commonly used commands.
So this is a selection of the commonly used ones, all put on one bar.
Certainly. We feel that it provides 80% access to 80% of the most frequently used commands.
Really, as much as that.
So if we want to be able, for example, to continue with the theme of opening files, this icon here, which is representing an open folder or an open file, if I point and click on it, here we again see that we have the open dialog box available.
And how did you find out that, how did you choose the 80%?
That's a good question. What happens is, during the development of the Excel program, there is something called the Usability Laboratory that was set up. This enabled the programmers or the developers to actually sit one side of a two-way mirror whilst users were sitting on the other side, and the code was really put through its paces. And with feedback from the users involved in the testing, the developers were actually able to identify the areas most frequently used and the ones that needed easy access. Okay?
Okay.
So let's cancel out of the open dialog box and continue to take a look at the toolbar.
Right.
So we've seen here that this one gives us entry to the open dialog box. This one here will provide us with a new sheet.
Right.
Now notice currently it says sheet 1.
Yes.
If I point and click, I now have sheet 2.
And you've got them both there.
Yes, so I can have multiple files open.
Yes,
All right. We could save or we could print at a click of a button.
Right.
All right. The other choices I was just going to mention at this stage, we'll be meeting a lot of them during the course of the video, but here this will help me embolden text so it stands out and is clearly communicated. So, for example, if I was to type in Excel here, enter it into the cell, and I wanted it to stand out, by pointing and clicking, I now have that emboldened. Notice also it's tactile button, it's depressed.
Yes.
I can see it's actually in, and I know I have the bold option
It's active.
on.
That's right. Yeah.
So if I want to switch it off, simply press the button again.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. However, as an XL3 user, Nigel, do you notice anything different about the standard toolbar that we see
Yeah, well,
here?
it's changed, yes.
Yes.
What's happened to the things that I'm
You've become
comfortable
used to.
with?
Fine. We actually have a series of toolbars that ship with XL4.
Right.
And they are task-oriented. So let me show you what I mean. One of the areas you probably notice are missing are the drawing tools.
Yes.
The ellipse
Yes.
and the square. If I come up to the options menu, you'll see that there's a clearly listed reference to toolbars, so
Yeah.
I can point and click on the toolbars option, and here are the range of toolbars available. So we can come down, and here, for example, you can see there's your Microsoft
Right.
XL3.
Oh, let's see it.
Yeah, shall we go and
Yeah,
have a look and
yeah.
show it?
Right.
And here it is.
Oh, yes, I remember that one.
Does it make you feel
yes,
happier?
Yeah.
Now these toolbars, you'll notice, we call them floating toolbars. So I can actually reposition them anywhere that makes it easier for me to do my work.
I see.
If I don't want them in the middle or to the side of my sheet, I can actually attach them to any of the four sides. So, for example, if I bring it down to the bottom and drop it, I've docked it. It's called docking it. So it's neatly out of the
yes.
way, still easily
Yeah.
accessible, but tidy.
And so I can have a selection up for myself as I'm working.
Surely.
Yeah. Great.
And at
Yeah.
this stage, let's use a combination of features. We've looked at the main menus. We also have something new in Excel called the shortcut menus.
Yes.
So if I wanted to access another toolbar for another particular task, then my shortcut menus are activated like this. I simply come up to one of the visible toolbars, and now my right mouse button will pull up the shortcut menu, and here I have immediate access to the list of toolbars. We can see which ones are currently being used because they have ticks against them.
Ah, yes, I see. Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So maybe I want my chart toolbar,
Yeah.
okay? And we can see now it remembers the last toolbar was docked and it's been added to the bottom of the screen.
Right.
So, yes, you can
Fantastic.
have any combination of the toolbars, and you can also customise them
Yes.
and put your own required combination of tasks together in one toolbar. And
So if I
later-
have a sequence of events, I can actually set it up and put it on the toolbar.
to make your job easier.
Like a mini macro. Yeah.
Certainly. And we will be
Great,
looking
yeah,
at that later
yeah,
on
good.
in the video.
Fine.
So, are you ready to move on? Look at
Yeah.
the next section. Was there
Yeah.
any... Yes? You're happy to go
Yes,
on?
I think so.
One thing
Fine.
perhaps I should come back to. Sorry, there's just one thing I thought I should look at, and that's how easy it is to enhance.
Right, enhance your screen.
Certainly.
Yeah, carry on.
We've had a look at emboldening the text.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if I want to increase the font size?
Yes.
Now, there is a menu there. In fact, let me just show you where the menu is so we can make the comparison on the usability.
Right.
We could go to the format menu and we could ask to format the font.
Yeah.
Here comes another dialog box. It has a sample area here. So as I make my changes, we
Yeah.
can actually see how that text is going to look.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. But the point I'm making is we can actually access that font increase by pointing and clicking on the letter A here.
Right.
So watch what happens to the text as I increase it.
Yes.
All right? And equally, I could decrease it.
So you can play around and actually see what's happening.
Yeah, and you're looking at
Yeah.
the result on the screen.
Great. Yeah.
Fine.
Good.
Now, let's take a closer look at the work area, shall we?
Yes.
Because we've had a look at the surrounding elements. And what I want to be able to do is focus on the current work area.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, at the top right of each of the worksheets, you'll see that we have two buttons. Now, the first button I'll be talking about later on, but it's this one we're particularly interested in. It's pointing upwards, so it's indicating that we can enlarge or zoom. So if I want to zoom into that sheet, optimise my work area, simply by pointing and clicking on it now,
Right.
we have the best working area.
The biggest area you've
Yeah.
got. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And you can see quite clearly, because again it's a graphical spreadsheet, that this work area is made up of a series of columns, the vertical elements on the screen.
Yeah. So
and
up
we
down
have
is the column. Yeah.
256 of those in each
Right.
sheet.
Yeah.
Do you think that will keep you going for a
Sure.
little while?
Yes. Yeah.
And horizontally, these are the rows, and we have over 16,000 of those.
Oh, that's certainly enough, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. And obviously the next question is how easy is it to move around such a large area? Yeah. On the right-hand side, can you see them? And
Yes.
along the bottom, we have what are known as scroll bars, so we can move sideways or up or down vertically. If I want to move across to the right, I have an arrow pointing in the required direction, and watch the column headings now as I move across.
Right.
See how you can
we're
scroll?
Going across. Yeah.
And if I want to
Great.
come back to the left-hand side, I can simply move back
Yeah.
in a controlled fashion.
Fine. Yeah.
Now, where the data is actually held, so for example, where Excel has actually been typed in, this is the point at which a column and a row intersects.
Yes.
And it's called a cell.
Right.
Now, a cell is always referenced by the column and then the row. And if we look at this area here,
Yeah.
this shows us our cell address.
So that's always up there.
It's
so
always
you know
on the
exactly
left-hand
where you
side.
are. Yeah.
And this white strip beneath the toolbar, the standard toolbar, is called your formula bar.
Right.
Now, it has two main purposes. The first one, as we've just seen, is to register your current position in the sheet. And if I move my position simply by using the cursor keys, notice how that address changes to
Yeah,
register the
yeah.
position.
Good.
Okay.
See that? Yes.
The second purpose of the formula bar, which we will see in a moment, is that we can actually input information and edit information within that cell.
Good. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Any other elements of the screen there that you'd like to ask me about?
No, I think that's covered most of it. Yes, I think it's covered that. How
Maybe-
about the help?
Right, the help option. Just before we move on to
Yeah.
the help, sorry, there's something I've realised that I haven't mentioned that is very useful to the user. If we could just zoom out, right at the bottom, do you see? Right at the bottom here,
Oh,
this
yes.
grey area here, this is your status bar.
Right. Telling you what's happening, basically.
Certainly. And on the left-hand side, it's your mode indicator. So all I mean by that is currently it's telling us it's ready. It's ready for us either to input the information or to execute a command.
Right.
If we come over onto the right-hand side, we'll see that we have a series of impressions, or dimples, if you like, in the
Yes.
status bar. And this will actually reflect which toggle keys we have on or off. So let me give you an example. If I want to type in capitals, I press my caps lock key
Right.
and it tells me your
Yeah,
caps lock
yeah.
is on.
Yeah.
All right. If I was to press my numeric lock key because I'm going to utilise information on the numeric pad, again I have confirmation
So
it's
again,
on.
it's telling you all the information. Great. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. I want to see that help now.
Yes, I know you do. Let's move on. Let's move on. There are different ways of accessing help.
Yes.
What I'd like to do is introduce it through the help menu first, and then we'll have a look at quick ways of pulling
Good,
up the
yeah.
help. So just by pointing and clicking again, we see that we have a drop-down list that's quite comprehensive. We can ask to see a list of the contents. This clearly documents by topic the different areas within Excel.
Yes.
You see?
Yeah.
Notice also how the mouse changes.
Yes.
So I know I'm making contact with a particular topic because I have my pointing finger. And if I want help, say, on worksheets generally, I could point and click, and up comes a breakdown of information on that particular topic.
Right. Yeah.
However, if there's something specific that I need help on, I can choose to search. And here we have a list of items again. The difference here is that I can actually ask for that specific option. So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
were talking about opening sheets
Yes.
before, weren't we? So if I want help on that, I can type in the letter O. You see how it takes you
Straight into
to
that
the
area.
occurrence?
Yes.
And as I continue to type the information that I'm interested
it's
in,
focusing
it
more and more.
certainly. So it's a quick and
Yeah.
easy way of picking up the information.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Nice.
We'll cancel down. And let's come out of this area here. Perhaps I need help while I'm working. So instead of realising at this stage I want to go and look for help, I might be in the process of carrying out a command. That's what this button is for here, the question mark attached to the pointer. By clicking on that option, you'll see it does just as the icon describes. This means now that if I was to come up, say, to the options menu, for argument's sake, and I come down to toolbars, this won't actually offer me the toolbars. It will call up the relevant sheet of help on that particular
the appropriate
command.
help, so that I can now learn about that section.
That's right.
Good.
So help while you work.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we?
Like that, yes.
Let's close down. How about the help facility for those users who are coming from another environment? Say 123, for example.
Lotus user. Yeah.
Certainly. Let's take a look. Here we actually have specific reference for those people making the transition into the Excel graphical environment. With this particular dialog box, we have two choices.
Yes.
Do we want written instructions that tell us how to make the same series of commands that I'm used to doing in 123 in Excel, or do I actually want a demonstration? Now that one's particularly nice because it means Excel will carry out the task for me whilst it's showing me how I do it.
Great. Yeah,
Let's take a look at instructions to start with. And on the left-hand side of this dialog box, we actually have a list of the 123 commands. So if I want to know how to open a file, I can take F for file and R for retrieve, and you'll see that we have a yellow post-it note that clearly shows me how to go through those steps. And that post-it note will stay there until I've completed the task, and it shows you at the bottom that I can just press escape to remove it. Okay?
Very nice. I like that. Yeah.
Finally, if I'm entering the Excel environment, perhaps for the first time, and I want an overview, all right, we also have an online tutorial, and it comes in two formats, introducing it or actually going through learning modules. So shall we have a look at the introducing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for the new user, yeah.
It's going to ask me, as always, because it registers I've made a change in this sheet, what do I want to do with the data? Well, here, because it was a test sheet, I'm just going to say, no, I don't want to save it.
That ensures that I don't lose anything that I've been working on.
That's right, most important.
Yes.
Now, up comes the first screen, very graphical.
Yes.
Pointers, the basics, and an explanation, so I know what that actually refers to. This might be of interest to you, Nigel. If you're an existing Excel 3 user, gives us an overview of the new features.
Good, yes.
And then again, the third area, to help the user making the transition from the 123 environment, we actually have the online tutorial there as well.
Great. And that can take you through the first parts of learning the product. Painless
transition.
Yes. Excellent. So has that covered all we want in help?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Let's go on to the next section.
Okay. Okay, in this next section, what we're going to have a look at is an overview of how easy it is to put together a professional-looking sheet.
Just like this?
Just like this.
Great.
So you'll see that we have the numeric input, we've got textual reference, it's all been formatted to look good, to communicate the information clearly. We have pointers with information. This enables us to have wrapping text with narrative to again bring out the elements of the sheet we wish to emphasise. And at the top, to round it all off, we have a nicely centred main heading.
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question remains, how easy is it for the user to put together something that looks as good as this?
Good. Let's have a look.
Let's have a look. Now I'm going to come up to the window menu and just bring to the front an empty sheet so that we're starting from scratch.
This is how we start.
Fine. Now in this example, the idea is that I want to be able to put together some information and forecast on it over the first 4 quarters, say, of this particular period. So I'm going to type in my heading straight away. Just moving down. You can see from the content that we're dealing with a package tour company.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And now I've input the information, I haven't left myself enough room to be able to put in the main heading that we saw earlier.
Yes, at the top, yeah.
Right. All I have to do is mark the information by clicking and dragging over it. We then take one of the edges and simply drag and drop to the desired location.
Right, yeah.
Okay, very quick, very easy. Now I can put in my heading. Let's just say it's for this particular year. If I make an error, you can see that the information is actually resident in the top here, so I can simply come back and re-enter it the way I wanted it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Underneath here, we actually want a heading because we're going to have totals.
Yes.
All right. Now, across the top, we actually want some column headings. Now, normally, this will be some indication of time.
Yes.
And in my example, I want to put the first quarter reference in.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what would you say, Nigel, if I told you that I can actually ask Excel to anticipate what I want in the remaining 3 quarters?
So just mark it all across.
Just mark it across.
That'd be
And
great,
that's what
yeah.
this handle here. Do you see the handle at the bottom right?
Yes.
All I have to
Mark,
do,
yeah.
I know I've made contact with it because the mouse changes to that black
I
plus,
see, yes.
is again to click and drag, extending the frame across
Right.
the remaining cells.
Yeah.
And when I let go, there's the information.
That's super. Yes. Yes, I could use that in my cash flow.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's put some data in now under those headings. What I'm doing at the moment is creating what we call just an input area. It focuses
Right.
the eye and it's going to be easier for me to input the information.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to punch the first set of figures in. I'm using my enter key to
Yes.
come down the column. You'll see that now it will wrap up to the beginning of the next column, and here I'm going to develop a trend. So the first one goes up by 100, the second by 200, and the third by 300.
Right, yeah.
Again,
Got
I
that.
can ask Excel to anticipate the rest of the trend for the third and fourth quarters by taking the handle, extending over the range, and releasing my button.
Yeah.
And here we can see it's incremented in 100, 200, and 300 steps.
Yeah, so it's automatically done it for me.
That's
yeah.
right.
Good.
What we're missing obviously now are the totals.
Yes.
So again, I simply mark the area I wish to see the totals in. And if we come up to the toolbar, remember we said the purpose of the toolbar was to place at the fingertips 80% roughly of the most commonly used commands.
Yeah.
And we've found that the summation is the most frequently used function.
Yeah.
So would you agree?
Certainly
Do you find
I'm,
that's...
Oh, yes, always using it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for speed, all I have to do now is click twice on what we call the auto sum button,
Right.
and it's input the
Ooh,
totals.
That's it.
Now, if we could zoom out, what I would like to do is add similar summation for the actual categories, so to find
Right.
out the total for
Yeah.
the different holidays.
Good.
So we're obviously going to need a totals heading at the top here. Instead of having to reinvent the wheel and type the information again, I can simply click on the original cell, and I'm using my control key now to copy the information up to the top here.
Oh, great. Yes. Yes.
And then once again, simply mark the destination cells
And some.
and sum.
Great. Yeah.
Okay.
We're
Now,
coming on.
We're coming on, it's growing. Now what I want to do is to be able to position it squarely on the sheet. So I'm going to use something now called auto selection.
Yes.
By marking the top left cell, I can hold the shift key down and just double click. This enables me quickly and easily to mark up an entire range. So for example,
right.
if the information was off the current screen, I could select the entire range.
Yeah. Yeah,
And-
that's very useful too.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. So now we're going to move this down and just reposition it about here, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's put our heading in, and Exotic Excursions is the name of the holiday company. And what I want to be able to do is perhaps enhance the heading, blow up the font and centre it squarely across the sheet.
Yes.
To enhance the heading, we have 2 buttons here to increment or decrease the font size. We saw these earlier on,
Yes.
so just click couple of times. Yeah.
Right.
And to centre it, all I need to do is mark the range over which I wish to centre the information.
Yeah.
And we have another auto function. It's called auto centre, and it's this button here. Do you see the A with the arrows
Yes.
either side? Point and click, and I now have a centred heading.
I see. That's within that range. Yeah.
Let's pay some attention now to the numeric format. So again, I'm just going to mark up the cells that I wish to format, and I'm going to use the shortcut menus. So by pointing at the numbers and using my right mouse button, up comes the relevant menu option. What I want to do is control the way the numbers look.
Right.
Now again, I'm going
Yes.
to move quite quickly through this.
Yes.
We'll be coming back and looking at it in more detail. What I actually want are the currency options, and I think we'll take the third one.
Yeah. Okay.
Fine. Now you'll notice...
Oh, that's slightly too big, is it?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. The hashes actually let us know that the information is too wide now to fit in to this particular column. But we have another auto facility, and it's called auto fit. Simply by coming up to the edge, watch how the mouse is going to change in this area next door to the column letter. By double clicking, Excel adjusts the column width.
Oh, right. It does it for me. I don't have to fiddle around.
No,
Yeah.
it's all there for you.
Good.
To control the overall look, you remember the first one that we had a look at was very smart with a coloured background.
Yes.
XL4 comes with 14 predefined displays.
Right.
So although I still have the ability to make the changes myself, for speed we have something called the auto format button. And this is the one next door to auto centre. Okay,
Yes.
you see it?
See it?
When I point and click, it's actually going to offer me the first of the 14 different types.
Yeah.
Now that isn't the one that I wanted particularly, so if I come to the format menu, here's the library of the auto formats, and by moving down I can see the different types that are available.
Ah, so it shows you what you can look at.
Yes, and it shows you
yeah,
what you're going to get.
What you're going to get,
So
yeah.
if we move down, we can see the different choices. Now this is the one, that's the
That's
one
the
that I
one,
want to
yeah.
work with.
Okay.
Okay. And there you go. Voila.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the finishing touches were to enhance the information and communicate it clearly. And if you remember, we wanted to make the overall total stand out.
Yeah.
So here I'm again going to bring the toolbar into play. And remember how we said they were task-oriented before? I want my drawing tools. So coming up to the standard toolbar and using my shortcut menu, the right mouse button, here are the list of the toolbars, and I want
Right.
the drawing toolbar. Okay,
Yeah.
now I'm just going to bring it down underneath so I can see clearly what I'm working with,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to choose a see-through ellipse.
Right.
So see how the button's depressed, and my
Yes.
mouse now changes to the drawing cursor.
I see. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to come across and I'm going to draw the ellipse around my figure. Now if it's not quite the right size, you see how I'm clipping the edge of the figure, we have the resizing handles and I can just adjust it slightly so it stands out.
Yeah.
And we
Got
want
that.
it to be very clear, so I'm going to change the colour, and again by using my shortcut menu, pointing at the edge of the shape, I can come down, and what we want are patterns. And let's change the colour. And let's really lend some weight to it. And that's what it's going to look like.
Right, so you see exactly what you're going to get.
Do you think
Yeah.
that's big enough?
Looks it.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
okay. So we say okay. And there
Fine.
it is. And then rapidly, what we're going to do is just add the arrow and the text box. Now we can bring the toolbar into view. Remember they're floating toolbars, so we can move them across
Yes.
the screen. So it's all at our fingertips. Oops, there we go. Now what I want is the arrow, so we just bring it down. Okay, now you'll notice how I've drawn it. The arrowhead points, all right, in the direction that you draw it. If you want
Right.
to remove one of these shapes, we can just press the delete key. And actually what I want to do is indicate that that's what I want them to look
Yeah,
at.
you want it the other way around.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
good.
And again, we just change the colour, and maybe we'll make it a little thicker.
Yeah.
Okay. Finally, the text box is this button here. We just pick it up. There you go, so you can see it.
Yes.
And I can draw it just like any other of the shapes.
Yeah.
Type in my text. notice how it's actually going to change. It wraps around.
Yes,
and I can adjust the size of my box. We've got the wrapping text.
Yeah.
There we go. And for formatting purposes, we actually have our colour palette, so I can choose which colour I want to work with, and I think I'm going to sit with the yellow because that stands out nice and clearly. And finally, add a drop shadow so that we've enhanced the look.
Excellent.
Now if we come back up, we can actually see
the whole thing.
Certainly.
And there's the finished article. Great.
Good. Now what we'll do, shall we just hide this?
Yes, we can get rid of that.
Yeah. Are there any questions that you'd like to ask at this stage before we go through and look in more detail at setting up a sheet?
No, I think that's covered it. We've had a look at what we can do. Now we're going to look at each bit of that in more detail.
Certainly.
Okay.
Okay.
Happy with that?
Yes.
Let's go on to the next
Let's move
section.
on. In this section, we're going to take a more detailed look at creating a spreadsheet.
Fine.
So again, I shall be starting from scratch, but we'll have a closer look at entering the information and formatting it. And again, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you're burning to ask.
Good.
Okay. So
look forward to that.
We'll start off then, and in this particular one, I'm choosing to start in A2, and the data here is going to be based around a series of offices. So we have one in London.
Yeah.
And Paris. And Rome.
Good.
And then we can come up to this area here, and across the top there we can put in our month references. Yeah.
Our months this time.
Yes, we'll have a change, and we'll put in Jan, and we'll use this year. Now again, I can enter it in. You see it's sat into that cell, or it's been placed into that cell rather, neatly on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Notice when I come back to London, do you see how the text is sitting on the left-hand side?
Right, so those are automatically left aligned, are they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything that's registered as a textual entry will sit to the left, and anything that's being picked up as a numeric entry will sit to the right initially.
Right.
Okay, that's why there's a difference in the alignment.
Yes.
If I want to be able to extend that now for February and March, we can take the autofill handle
Yes.
and stretch it across.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the autofill facility that we saw in our 60-second sheet.
The month sequence, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's enter a number here and take a real close look at what happens. If I type in the first figure, let's just go for 100, do you see how I'm actually resident? The information is resident in the formula bar.
Yes.
And we have a very clear stop or go signal.
Yeah.
So if I'm unhappy with what I've entered, I can click on the stop button and it cancels that completely.
Right.
All right. Now this would have applied in exactly the same way to the headings here or across the top. All right, so we'll enter the information, and if I'm happy with it, I can either click on the go button or just hit the enter key.
Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yes.
So remember how I had created an input area before? Let's do the same thing here, just to speed up the input. And all I have done is selected the information.
Right.
If I want to move sideways this time in my range, I can press the tab key.
Yes.
Do you remember that we used the enter key before when we were going down the columns?
Right.
Okay. And we'll just input the information. Notice how it wraps around?
Yeah.
So it's very quick. Very easy.
Right, so it leads me through that section.
Right. Now I'm going to leave that area selected because when it comes to editing the information, it's often easier to focus on the area of your sheet you want to change whilst it's selected.
Yeah.
And again, using this data input area makes that an easier task. I can move to the cell I wish to change. So let's say it's the London March figure I wish to change.
Yes.
Tab across to the one that I want. See, the information is reflected in the formula bar.
Right.
And if that should have been 3,000, I could just click here and enter the extra digit.
Right. Yeah.
And I've edited the cell.
Yeah.
All right?
And if you change your mind, that's with what? Escaping and
At
just
this
leaving it?
stage, if I was unhappy with that, in the edit menu, we can actually undo. And in this case, we're undoing the entry that we made, which returns me to normal. And that would work with deletions and formatting as well.
Good.
Okay. If I want to just change the entire content of the cell, then I can click on the cell I want to change, all right, and notice the selection has gone. Just by clicking, just removes the selection. And I can type in the new figure straight over the top.
Yeah.
So again, depending on the type of changes you want to make, you'll either replace completely or edit. Now,
Good.
remember we looked at the quick keys. May I just show you this at this stage?
Yeah, sure.
Because we want to be able to make changes quickly and easily, I could use my F2 key, which would be familiar to me if I'd worked in other spreadsheeting environments. That gives me access to the formula bar, do you see?
Yes.
But we're in a graphical environment, so if I actually want to be able to make changes, as you saw before, don't forget that you can have instant access just by pointing and clicking.
Yep.
Okay. Happy with data input generally?
Yes, that looks fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the calculations then.
Yes.
So if I put my heading in here, which is where I want to see the totals, and what we're going to take a look at first is just formula entry.
Right.
Yeah. Now, when you input the calculations inside your sheet, you actually use the cell address containing the data as opposed to the data itself.
Yes.
That way, your formula will always be able to update itself if you make changes to the figures.
Right, so the B1 or B2, something
Quite
like
right.
that. Yeah.
So I could start my formula, or I do start my formula with an equals, and then I have what's called point and click calculation. So I can say, well, I want to add that. Do you see how the cell address is coming up for me?
Yeah.
And I'm going to add it to that one, and I'm going to add it to that one.
Right.
Okay? And then I can enter it in, and there's the information.
Good.
We can see the formula quite clearly.
Yes.
And if I make a change to this figure, can you see how the total is automatically updated? So that's the principle behind the calculation.
So you've got two things, basically, the figure and the calculation.
The mathematical operator you want to use. Let's just take that out. I press the delete key,
Yes.
and you can see it gives us options on how much information from that cell we wish to remove. Well, I just want to get rid of the formula. And we'll go back and take the auto sum option. All right?
Yes.
We're going to look at formulas and functions in more detail later on. So at this stage, this is all I want to do. Remember, here we can just mark the area and click twice.
Yep.
Happy with that?
Yes, so that's on the lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so far within this particular sheet, we've been looking at summations or additions, but it may well be that we want to carry out some other sort of calculation, like a multiplication or a division.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just take an area here just to have a look at it. If I was going to enter a figure in here, yes?
Yes.
And I have another figure here, for argument's sake, underneath. And below this, what I actually want to be able to do is to subtract one from the other.
Yeah.
All I have to
That's
do,
a simple subtraction,
put the equal sign in, which tells Excel I'm starting a formula, indicate the first cell, enter the subtraction, indicate the second cell, and enter it in. And it shows me that I have a minus return, a negative return.
Which makes sense, yeah.
Okay. So you would apply that same procedure whether it was a multiplication or a division.
Yeah.
Comfortable?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Good. Okay, let's move on. Deletion obviously is important, the ability to be able to remove information. So if I want to take that out of the sheet, I simply mark it, press the delete key again, and in this situation it's only formulas. Let me just explain. That would refer to not only the calculation, but the text or the numeric entry in the selected cells as well.
Right.
Okay. Fine. Any other questions at that stage?
No, that seems to be fine.
Great.
Yeah.
So we've
What
used
do
the
we do
icon,
next?
we've used the icon for summing. The only other thing is arranging windows, because remember that we can work with multiple sheets.
Yes.
And in our example, just to point it out to you, if we come to the window menu, this window enables us to handle the multiple sheets easily and efficiently. And what I might want to be able to do is, from the sheets that I actually have open, these are from the other sessions when we've been working, I might want to be able to see them all simultaneously. Particularly helpful if I'm going to transfer data, perhaps, between the three, or make comparisons. So we have an arrange option, and this will allow me to tile them, have them laid out vertically or horizontally. So let's stay with the tiled reference and say OK.
Right,
and here
so I
you
can see all of them, and then I can pick things up.
That's quite right. I can move between them to activate the sheet. Simply point and click on the one you want, and can you see how its title bar becomes active?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. So,
next stage.
Okay, let's move on to the next section.
Having created the sheet from scratch, what we want to be able to do now is focus on making alterations. We've seen briefly how to edit and change, but what about inserting rows or columns and being able to move or copy the information to new places?
Yes, one's always wanting to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. If we take a look at the editing again then, just to recap from the previous session, what we want to be able to do perhaps is to change these headings. Yes, so we're going to go on now to April, May, June perhaps.
Right.
So to change the content of the cell, I position the cursor as I have done here, simply type in the new heading and make a full replacement.
Right.
Okay, and then I'm going to use the autofill facility again across the top of the remaining information.
Yeah.
So a quick and easy way of making edits there.
Neat. Yes, very neat.
Okay. Let's take a look at copying. Now, there's lots of different ways of copying and reasons why you'd want to copy. Perhaps the first reason, the most common, would be that we have our totals here.
Yes.
And again, I refer you back to the 60-second sheet. And I've now decided that I want to be able to total up the categories for each of the offices.
Right.
Yeah.
So, column total or...
totals for the
total
rows.
in the columns, yes.
Yeah. Now, what we have to do here in Excel 4, remember that we have copy and drop as well as drag and drop. The difference is simply that I will hold the control key down. Now, if you look at the mouse, Nigel, can you see how there is a plus next door to the pointer?
Yes.
And that gives me a clear indication I've now in copy mode as opposed to the drag and drop move facility.
Fine.
So I can take the border and again just drag and drop at the desired location.
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay. The next situation is I decide that I want to put in a total for the London row.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about selecting all the empty cells. I'm just focusing on that one row there, and I know that I want a total.
Yeah.
So I sit in that particular destination cell, which is E2 in this situation, come up to the toolbar, and I click twice to sum that row. Then I realise that I want to see the same sort of calculation for Paris and Rome and for the overall total.
Yeah.
Here, I mark the original cell and the empty cells.
Right.
Come up to the Edit menu, and what I want to do really is to fill the empty cells. Would you agree?
Yes.
Fill the empty cells with that formula. So go to the Edit menu, and towards the bottom you can see that Fill Down is waiting for us. So I just point and click, and it transfers the formula.
Great.
So another type of copy to do with calculations.
And also you could have done that with the keyboard, with the various shortcuts that we showed you
You're
earlier.
quite right.
Yeah.
And if we look at it, you'll see, yes, Control D.
Control D would have done that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah.
The final scenario for the copying that I wanted to pick up here is that you may want to be able to share the data either with a colleague or between files. And one of the most straightforward ways of doing this is to copy the information from one sheet to another sheet.
Right.
All right?
Yeah,
you could move, but this is a copy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to select the information I'm interested in.
Yes.
I'm going to go up to the Edit menu.
Yeah.
And here I can clearly see copy listed.
Right.
Now when I select this, can you see the moving, what's called a moving marquee line that's going around
yes,
the block?
around the edge.
Now
yeah.
this tells me that the information that's selected is sitting in a temporary memory that we call the clipboard.
Yeah.
All right. Now I have a sheet already that I want to move or copy the information to, and we've already mentioned that we can go to the window menu, and at the bottom of the window menu it shows us which files are open. You see that there's a tick against sheet 3.
Yes.
That's our current sheet, and I want to move to sheet 1.
Right.
So there we are.
Yeah.
I simply decide now where I want the information to come in, mark the top left position, go to the edit menu, and say I want to paste it in.
Yeah.
And there's
there
the
it is.
information.
Oh, that's very simple. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's moving between sheets.
Well, that
yeah.
has copied the information for us.
Yeah.
If I had wanted to move, then the command I would have used would have been cut. I
Right.
suppose that would have cut it from the original and pasted it into the new sheet.
Yeah. That's easy. Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we come down now and let's work with this one then for a little while. How about spreading the information out? What if I want to be able to create a blank row between the first piece of information here and my column headings,
Yes.
just for ease of viewing?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Like that.
Okay. The only thing to remember when you decide that you want to insert a row is that the new row will come above whichever area you have selected.
Right.
Now, to select a row cleanly, you simply click on the row number.
Right.
So I'm going to click on the row number and I'm going to go up to the edit menu.
Yeah.
Now I've chosen the London row
Yes.
because I know that the new row will come above this location, and I simply say I want to insert,
Yeah.
and there it is.
Ah, that's quicker than it used to be.
All right. If I forget to select, it doesn't matter at all. So I just remember that I want the row to come above the
Yes.
totals row, and I don't bother to select the row.
Yes.
So then I go to the edit menu and I say, OK, insert, and I get something different. It doesn't matter.
Ah, right.
It doesn't matter.
This is what I remember.
OK?
Yes.
And
yes.
it's saying because you only picked up a particular cell or group of cells, it's assuming perhaps that you may only want to move
One
or
little
insert,
piece,
sorry,
yes.
a group, but we
Yeah.
want a row.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Happy with
great.
that?
Yes. So you've got all the options, basically.
Yes,
to
very
do what
easy
you
to
want.
use.
Yeah.
Very easy to use. Another area that is going to be invaluable to the user is the ability to randomly select groups of information. This is called non-contiguous selection.
Right.
Right.
Oh, you can do that.
You certainly can, and it speeds up a lot of the processes, whether it's deletion or formatting.
Yes.
So here, for example, let's say I wanted to clear out my totals.
Yes.
Now, normally, when you select a range of information, so there I have my, there I have my row,
Yeah.
and then I say, right, well, I also want to mark up. Do you see how you lose the original
other. Yeah.
area?
Yeah.
Let's try it again. If I mark the first range,
Yes.
to pick up that second, third, fourth, or however many other ranges you want, all I have to remember to do is to hold the Control key down,
Yes.
and I can now go ahead and mark up the next range.
Good.
All right, now when I press the Delete key and say OK,
Yeah.
I've removed the information from both those areas.
Great.
And if it was
Yes.
the wrong information, don't forget that you can undo
it.
the last thing you've
And
just
back
done.
it comes again. I could have used that.
It's
Didn't know
always
that.
the way. It's always the way. Fine.
Good. So does that cover the modifying and deleting?
We
Yeah?
have had a look at the insertion of the rows and the columns, and we've
Yeah.
looked at deleting information. We haven't really covered deleting rows or columns.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. So if we're going to delete, say, let's delete the blank row.
Yeah.
I'll remove the selection just by
Yes.
clicking anywhere else. The thing to bear in mind when you're deleting an entire row is that you are going to be removing all cells from the 256 columns.
Right.
Yes, and if you're going to delete a column, you're going to be removing all the information down your rows.
whole way down, yes.
So what we do is just mark clearly the row or column we wish to remove. And again, remember, with the row, we just click on the row number.
And it self-adjusts all the formulas, doesn't it?
Certainly, yes. So everything will still be in place and still relevant.
Good.
If we want to mark a column, we could just click on the column letter.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to that row, because that's a good example to get rid of that blank row. Go up to the Edit menu, and again, you can see Delete quite clearly, and this will physically remove that row from the spreadsheet, and everything else adjusts.
Great. Okay. Fine. I think we've covered that.
Ready to move on?
Yeah.
Good.
Let's go to the next section.
Okay. One of the most important areas when working with your spreadsheet information, obviously, is to save it, and to save it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there. We've all been there. So in this section, what we're going to have a look at are the different ways that we can save and name. I say the different ways. There are two types of save, and we're just going to discuss those briefly.
Right.
Okay.
Good.
We'll work with the information that we had set up in the last section.
Yes.
And we must save it now. It's a good time to save it. So I can either use an icon, or I can go to the File menu. You will see that currently it's referencing one of the automatic names, which is Sheet 1, because it was the first sheet to have been created in this work session. What we want to do is give it a more meaningful name, so that when we come back and look for it, we'll recognise it.
Great.
Okay. Now, I'll come back to the icon in a moment, if I may, but what we'll do is go into the File menu, because in here we can clearly see the two types of save. Now, the idea is that save on its own would be used once you have stored the information on the disk for the first time. So if you're just updating
once it's got a name and you're just quickly updating it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. The second option is when you're saving it for the first time, or perhaps you want to save it to a different location, perhaps from your local drive up onto the network, or vice versa.
Okay.
Having
we'll
said,
see that, I think, won't we? Yeah.
Well, we'll see changing location, surely. Having said that, though, I don't want to give the impression that if we chose save in this instance, that it wouldn't let us save the information. It will recognise the fact that we haven't stored it to disk, and it will ask us for the name.
Good.
All right.
Yes. Okay.
But let's go through as we've described it and choose save as in this instance. All right. Now you see your dialog box.
Yeah.
And we'll go through the different elements in this box. The first thing that it's asking you for is a name, and you can see that it's already got the temporary name there. It's also highlighting it for you. These areas that we're able to type into are called text boxes. Notice how the mouse changes when you bring it up. This is called the I-beam, and it always tells us that we're able to enter text in these areas.
Right.
The reason it comes up selected is to save us time. If you remember the phrase, typing replaces selection, it means that if I enter my new name now, shall we use your name?
Yes, okay.
If I enter your name now, it will automatically replace the selected information, saving me time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another time saver.
Surely.
Yeah.
Again, we're working with the maximum of the 8 characters. All right? Here, if we have a look across the top, we're being shown where this information will actually be stored, whereabouts, the drive and the directory.
Right.
Okay. If we want to be able to change the destination drive, in this section, you see I just clicked on the down arrow with the underscore. I'm shown a list of the available drives. In this situation, I could choose between C and A. So let's change to A.
Yeah.
All right. And what you will see is it now updates the information there.
Yeah.
Happy?
Fine. Yeah.
The only other consideration could be the nature of the file format.
Yes.
So you see that we can actually choose how we save this particular file, and there are a whole range of options, beginning with earlier versions of Excel, and you see it goes through different types of text format.
Yeah, the
1, 2, 3 formats.
Diff, and even Macintosh.
Yeah, and Macintosh.
Great.
So it's a comprehensive range. Okay. Now we'll leave this one as normal and we'll just save it to the A drive.
Good.
So by saying OK, that's going to save the information. And if we look at the top of the screen now, can you see the name of your file clearly displayed?
It's up on the screen, yes.
At the top there. If we just come up, you can see it there.
Yeah.
Having saved the information for the first time to the disk, let's make a change. Perhaps we just want to pop that into capitals so it stands out clearly. And I now want to be able to update the file. For speed, again, I can come to the toolbar, and this is where the save icon comes into its own. Simply point and click. The hourglass comes up to let you know it's saving. It gives you a percentage reading below. I've just updated my file.
All done.
All done.
Fantastic.
Ready to move on?
Let's go to the next section.
Fine. So to date, we've input the information, we've put in calculations, and most important of all, we've saved our hard work. But how about the way it looks?
Yeah. Like to do some of that.
Yes, so we'll have a look at formatting.
Right.
Now this is going to encompass the way the text looks, how you'd like to see your numbers, whether you want to differentiate between the actual values and the totals, and maybe have currency on the totals, and also the graphics.
Right.
So let's move on.
Let's get on with that.
Let's move on. You may notice, I think the thing I notice most from this area, if we look at the headings to start with, is how, because the text sits to the left and the numbers sit to the right, it's not looking very neat.
Yeah,
so
totals needs to go over.
It would look better, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So making sure that the cursor is over the cell whose alignment you wish to change.
Right.
We can come to the toolbar yet again, and here you will see 3 buttons. All right, and if I click on the second one, do you see how total sits to the centre?
Yeah.
And if I click on the third one, it's right aligned. So the first one
left aligned
would pull us back to the left.
Yeah.
So let's just leave it on the right alignment.
Great.
So that looks neat. Let's have a look at how we can change the numeric information. So I'm going to use my auto select again. By holding down the shift key, I can just double click in the direction I wish the selection to extend.
Right.
And I'm going to use my shortcut menus. There's no need for me to go back up to the main menu.
Right.
By pointing at the figures and holding the right mouse button down, up comes the menu that's appropriate to the selected area, and I want to change the way the numbers look.
Yes.
Okay, do you remember we saw this dialog box earlier on? So let's take a closer look. On the left-hand side, you will actually see the different types of numeric format categorised. And if you watch the contents here, as I move down, do you see how it's showing you the choices that are available?
Different ways of doing it,
That's
for time
so
and date.
It's very quick and easy to find the format that you're looking for. And at the bottom, we have a sample, so that if we're not sure what some of these choices will give us, we can actually see the effect it's going to have.
So it shows exactly what you're going to get. Good.
Now I'm going to go for number for the main range, and I think I'd like to have 2 decimal places and a comma, so we can see now that that's the one we've got.
Yep.
And say OK.
Good.
All right.
Oh, we've got a problem.
We see it's just information. Excel is giving us information, telling us that we now have too much information to fit into that cell.
Right.
Do you remember how we can ask Excel to adjust the column width according to the content? Auto fit. Simply follow up to the edge of the column you wish to change, wait for the mouse to register, and double click.
Yeah.
Very quick, very easy.
Excellent. Yeah.
Let's do it once more, just for the totals here. Okay?
Yes.
So use the right mouse button, come down to the option that we want, which was number. This time I'm going to use my currency reference.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll choose this one because it matches with the comma and the decimal places.
Right.
Okay. All right. Again, it will happen, but remember the speed, just double click and it adjusts it.
Yeah.
One other thing I'd just like to point out at this stage is you can use auto fit across a range of columns, because it may be, as you're formatting, that several columns need adjusting. By selecting the columns you're interested in, remember we do this by clicking on the column letter, extend across.
Yeah.
All right. There's another way of adjusting your column width, and that's dragging and dropping. So if I create a situation whereby we have insufficient room, I'm going to grab a hold of the edge of column E and just make it half its original width.
Right.
When I let go, do you see how it has now changed that for all of them?
Yes.
So this
yes.
may have happened because I've been changing my format.
Yeah.
Not a problem, we can do it across a range.
Yeah.
Also, your random selection, maybe it's two separate columns you wish to alter.
Right.
So again, by using the control key again,
Yeah.
to remember.
Yes.
So I've marked the first one, hold the control key down, and I can now mark as many others as I wish.
Excellent, yes.
And again, as I make my changes, I'll actually be changing those
Everything.
columns.
Good.
Okay. So we've altered the way the numbers look, we've adjusted our column widths quickly and easily. How about the text?
Yeah.
So if we take the headings here, again we're going to use the random selection because I can't stress how much time that can save the user. I want not only London, Paris and Rome changed, but I'd also like my total heading here, so hold the control key down, and my total heading here changed. Right, just as an example.
Yeah.
I can go up to the Format menu and choose Font.
Yeah.
Here we have a very comprehensive dialog box, okay?
Yes.
We can choose the different sorts of fonts that we wish to
Right.
work with. Now, as we go down the list, notice a mini scroll bar like the one we had on the
Yes,
spreadsheet
yes.
that makes
For
it
each
easy to
little
go
section.
down the list.
Yeah.
They're listed alphabetically, so it's easy to find them. We see a series of icons on the left-hand side of the different fonts, okay? So these ones indicate that they're the printer fonts,
Right.
and the ones with the T
Yes.
icon next door to them, these indicate that this particular font is a TrueType font. It's the new font technology now that's available with Windows 3.1 and gives us much more quality control over the fonts on the screen. So as we enlarge the font sizes, they're going to look good and print well.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, here we have the sample area, so if I choose a different font, you can see
Yes.
the change being made.
See
In
what
actual
it's gonna
fact,
look like. Yeah.
Arial is the one that I'm most comfortable working with.
Right.
That's my house style. So if I pick up a different size, and maybe I want a colour so it really stands out. Should we choose a blue?
Dark blue. Yeah. That looks nice.
You
Yeah.
happy with that?
Yeah.
And say OK. Now, when I click away,
Oh, we get what we want.
you
Yes.
see now you've changed that.
Great. Yeah.
You happy with that?
Yes, very
Yeah?
nice.
Okay.
Can see how that works.
You might want to combine a series of formats to save time again. So I mentioned the term style.
Yes.
Well, a style is a way of storing a combination of formatting attributes, right? So it could be the size, the colour, the numeric format. Now, the styles can be accessed through the toolbar here. So we're using the normal or the default style, and when we point and click, you can see that these are some of the default options that will actually come with each new sheet. But I want to be able to create my own style.
Right.
All right? Okay. Let's say I like what I've done there,
Yes.
and the attributes that I have with the size and the colour and the type of font I want to store so I can use it again and again. The quickest and easiest way of doing it is something called styling by example.
Yes.
All right? I simply change one particular cell so it looks the way I want it to.
Yes.
Click on the cell, come up to the style area,
Yes.
and remember typing replaces the selection, so I
Right.
can just type in my style and
Yes.
hit return. All right, I have now created a style that I can use within the sheet.
Oh, that's
So
good.
if
yeah.
we were to come into another cell for argument's sake, maybe I add another heading in here perhaps. Where would you like to have this particular branch?
Frankfurt.
Right. All right, I'll type it in. You see it comes up in what is the standard font, but quickly and easily now I can actually choose my style from the list.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Another benefit is that if a change is made, let's say I wanted it to be red instead of blue, yeah, manually I can go up and change the format again. So I'll go to Font, because this is where I can achieve colour alteration.
Yes.
Choose, let's go for a dark red.
Right.
The sample tells us that this is what we've asked for. I'm happy with that. Say OK. Now what I want is a ripple effect that's going to pick up every other piece of information in my sheet that's been formatted with my style.
Yeah.
Simply leaving the cursor on the altered information, come up to my style.
Yes.
Hit the enter key and a dialog box will appear that clearly says, do you want to redefine your existing style?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And when I say yes, it will go and locate the others that have been altered.
Right.
Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Good.
Yeah. Fine.
So those are the styles, the idea of the styles. Obviously we've given a brief example, but you can use it to store all sorts of formatting information.
So, the drawing tools?
The drawing tools, or how about the auto format?
Yes.
Yes, so we come on to the drawing tools at the end.
Okay,
now the auto
fine.
format is another way of speeding up this formatting process.
Yes.
All right. And what I'd like to do is, shall we come up to the window menu, and we'll pick up this sheet that we were working with earlier on in the video, because this is fairly plain at the moment.
Yes.
All right. If I want to be able to change the way this looks quickly and easily, simply by having my cursor somewhere in this range,
Yes.
I can come to the toolbar and I can actually locate the auto format button, which is just up here next door to the auto center. Now when I showed it to you before, I clicked the first time and notice it's going to apply the format that was last used. Do you recognise this one from our earlier session?
Yes.
So whichever is the most recently used one will play back.
That's fantastic.
But how
yes.
about wanting a different type?
Yeah.
Now you know that we could go to the format menu and we
Yes.
could choose auto format, but for speed, by holding down the shift key, I can actually rotate through the different sorts of formats that are
so
available.
you can just click on one after the other.
Surely.
Yeah.
So maybe I
Until the
don't
one I
know
want.
which one I want, but I'll know when I see it.
Yes.
So it's that type of idea.
Great.
Okay, should we rest with that one?
Yeah.
And notice that with this, it's actually picked up right alignment for the headings automatically.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's made a differentiation with the totals.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's got a 3D effect on the totals.
Just to give it more impact there.
Super. Yeah.
All right. Now you mentioned the drawing tools, quite right.
Yeah.
So if we want to really emphasise a particular area, we can use our drawing tools to accentuate that information. And again, the toolbar is really the easiest way of doing it.
Yes.
And remember that the toolbars are task-oriented. So I don't need the main menu. I can simply come up to my standard one, use the shortcut menu, and choose my drawing toolbar.
Right.
All right. If we zoom out, you'll see it will come back to the last position of a toolbar in the sheet. Now it's floating, so it's not a problem. I can put it anywhere that I like within that sheet.
Yes.
And what we'll do, shall we choose an ellipse and maybe, as we did before, but perhaps have a slightly different effect with it?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So we'll come here and we'll draw the shape. Now if we wanted to take that shape off and make alterations to it, maybe we're not used to working with drawing tools, so we would prefer to draw the shape down here somewhere until we're happy with it. Yes? So let's delete that one. I've selected the object simply by pointing and clicking on it. I know it's selected because I can see the handles, these black blocks.
Right.
So with it selected, press the delete key and we've got rid of it. Let's try it again. I'm not sure where I want the oval to go, so I draw the oval here. I now am able to format it by using my shortcut menus. And again, we saw that we could actually choose from a range of colours.
Right.
Should we go for a deep blue, perhaps, here? And we can add weight to that shape.
Yes.
Now, if we zoom out a little, we'll see that there's the sample that enables us to check. And also notice, we went through help right at the beginning of the video, but in these dialog boxes, as we're working, we're able to access the help facility from within the dialog box as well.
That's great, yes.
Okay.
Good.
So it will say, all right.
Okay.
Now, I'm happy with that. How do I move a shape? Well, particularly with this type of shape, when it's see-through,
Yes.
simply select the shape and what you're going to point at is the actual line itself, not the handles, because we know that if we take the handles we size.
Right.
So if you just want to transport it to a new location, then you're simply going to aim at the line itself. And do you notice at the bottom left of the screen, in my status bar, I now have confirmation that I'm moving.
Yeah.
Right?
And
so now I
away
can
you
pick it
go.
up and just drop it over the information that I'm interested in.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want narrative, you can actually choose. I mean, you can see that there's quite a wide range of different sorts of tools. We could take the text box. This is your text box.
Yes.
And again, notice the instruction at the bottom left of the status bar. There will always be information there to help the user. So it's telling us that we want to drag the information. So here it is.
Pop it up there.
Right.
And then
I can
type in
the
your
information.
Good.
And it wraps.
Yeah. Well, I think that covers that, doesn't it?
You're happy with that?
Yeah,
You ready to go and try it for yourself?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And let's go on to the next section.
Great. In this section, Worksheet Display, I thought we'd take a look at the areas that we can control that you might not think about initially.
Right.
For example, the grid lines that we see on the screen here to denote the different cells, how much control do we have over those? And also, if you're copying information with formulas and you have zeros appearing, or perhaps the answer is a zero, how do you control whether you see that information or not?
Great.
Okay?
Yeah.
Right, let's have a look then at the scenario of being able to suppress zero display.
Right.
Yeah? Why would you be in that situation? For example, if I'm going to put my totals here,
Yes.
and I don't choose random selection to ignore the blank row that I've put
Right.
in above the totals, this is what will happen. And
I see,
obviously
yes.
the formula will have been included in that empty cell and it gives me a zero reading, which is not appropriate. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I can stop that from showing or suppress that simply by going up to the options menu, display, and you can see quite clearly that there's a reference to the zero values.
Right.
So click on it, remove the check mark. These are check boxes, these squares. So if there's a check mark in there, they're on. Now mine is empty, so it's off.
And that's also where you could get rid of the row and column headings if you wanted.
Quite right.
Yeah.
And the grid lines, which we'll be coming back to in a second.
Okay. Yeah.
So say OK. And you'll now see if we zoom out that where we had the zeros showing now, they've been suppressed. Very quick and very easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why might you want to suppress the display of the grid lines? Well, we saw in the 60-second sheet earlier on that we had the data on a blank page.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, with nothing.
With nothing there. So we were actually looking at it as it would print out, if you like. Here, my example is that I have manually placed a format around my totals to make them stand out. And to do this, from the Format menu, I'm going to use the border option.
Ah, I see.
Now, borders allow me to choose which part of the selected area I want to draw around. So an outline would do the entire box. It would put a box around the entire lot. But I want to be selective. Across the top, I just want a single thick line.
Yes.
And on the bottom, because it's a total, I want to use the double line symbol.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
When I say OK, click away from the information, you can see it.
Yes.
But you'd be able to see it even better, wouldn't you, if you went to Options, Display, and asked for the grid lines to be switched off.
Right. Yes, and that'll look nice on my report as well, because I want it nice and clean. Yes. Yeah. Great.
All right.
So that's okay.
Yeah.
Let's get on with the next section.
In this next section, I'd like to explore some of the other file management commands. We saw earlier on in the video, didn't we, Nigel, how easy it was to save.
Yes.
But what happens if you want to be able to close some files down or perhaps open up a group of files?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's have a look at that.
let's remind ourselves that we have a number of files open already. So you can see in the list here, these are the 3 files that we have open.
Sure.
Now there are 2 ways of closing down. If I just go to the File menu and choose Close,
Yes.
this will close my current sheet, which was your sheet here. So if we
Right.
click on Close, we see the others still.
Yes.
If I want to close all of them down, I can hold the Shift key, come up to the File menu and see the Close All option.
I see. Yeah.
Okay, so if we click on that, we now have a completely empty screen, and we are in fact looking at the Excel main menu.
Right. Okay.
You're happy with
yes,
that?
that's
Yeah.
fine.
When it comes to opening, we also have choices on how we open. The quickest way is to go to the File menu, and here we can see that Excel keeps a track of the most recently used sheets.
Yes.
So if I want to bring your
Yes.
sheet back,
Yeah.
all I have to do is point and click on it.
Great. Yeah. Why has it come up small?
It's a good question. The reason that you see it being reopened small in this fashion is that we had multiple file open earlier on. Now the
Right.
best way to explain it is let me bring back some more files and then
Yes.
I'll show you exactly why
Okay.
that's happening. It's easy for me to do this because in Excel 4 now we can open multiple files in one go. So if I go to the Open option by pressing
Yes.
on the button, I want to pick up the basic sheet.
Yes.
Here we go. So I'm going to pick up this one, but I also want to pick up budget as well.
Right.
By holding down my Control key, I can select that file at the same
Right.
time,
So
and you
multiple
see the list.
selection of files.
That's it. You can see the list
Yes.
building up here.
Sure.
Now
Yeah.
all I have to say is OK. All
And
right.
you've got those.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now let's come back to the earlier question that you raised,
Yeah.
which was why had your sheet come up in that small window to start
Right.
with. If we take a look at the Arrange option, you'll see that we have a series of choices, and we can tile them.
Yes.
Okay, if we zoom out, we'll be able to see to the best effect.
Right,
That
yes.
enables us to see all of the
And
information.
cut and paste if we want to between them.
That's
yeah.
right. And what's happening is that in this particular dialog box, can you see that there is an option slightly lower down, which would mean that these choices would be applying to just the active document.
Right.
With this option off,
Yes.
it means that if we choose tiled or horizontal or vertical, let's try a vertical one, Excel is assuming that we want this type of arrangement to apply to all sheets.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I want to ensure that my individual sheet will come back in its zoomed in version, then what I can do is go back up to my window option, choose Arrange, and make sure that if I'm tiling it, I'm going to have it with the windows of the active document.
Right.
Okay,
I
does
see.
that answer
yes.
your question?
Yeah. And then it'll save
Remember
like
that.
that and come back
Quite
like that.
right.
Great. Yeah.
Okay.
I
so
can understand that.
Good. So we've seen in this area that we've been able to close down one individual sheet or a combination of sheets. We've also been able to call back by opening one
Yeah.
or by opening multiple ones. In this particular section, I think it would be relevant to include importing and exporting. How
Right.
easy is it for the user to introduce files that are non-Excel files, and how easy is it to take Excel information and introduce it into another spreadsheeting
Yeah.
program?
Good.
Okay. Let's work with your sheet here, okay? And we'll just zoom in on it. Now, if I go to the File menu, I can choose Save As,
Yes.
okay? And let's just change the name here. We'll pick our box up so it's easier for us to see. There we go. And for a change, let's just put... There we go. Let's use my name.
Right. Okay.
At the bottom, we're able to choose what sort of file type we would like. And if we open up the file type list, you can see that we have a whole range of different options for exporting.
Including the old Excel.
Certainly,
Yeah.
you can see
Yeah.
there. If we scroll down a little further, I wanted a 1, 2, 3 format, so we'll choose the WK3 option.
Right.
You can see now that the name is actually reflected in this area here.
Ah, yes. Yes.
You're happy with that?
Yes.
And I can say OK. And if we look at the top of the screen now, you can see that file has now been converted into a 1, 2, 3 file format.
And that has saved it.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
Good.
So how easy is it to import?
Bring it back again.
So let's have a look at what we have here. If I click on my open option, the first issue is when we look in the open dialog box,
Yeah.
you'll actually see that we're looking at just Excel files.
Right.
And the reason for this is the file specification at the top. Do you see
Yeah.
how it's registering
Yes.
Excel asterisk?
Mm-hmm.
For ease of use, at the bottom we can list files of type, and I'm interested in looking at the 1, 2, 3 files that I have on my
Right.
disk. And here they
so
are.
you only get shown those.
That specific group, and you'll notice that the one we've just created is
Yeah.
showing there as well.
Right.
Okay, now the one I want to bring back is east.wk1, so I can just click OK, and there's the information. So that's how
And
easy it
so-
is to import the
Very
information.
easy. That's incredible.
Now there was one last item that I felt would be useful to introduce here,
Yes.
and that is how easy is it to delete information if you want to
Deleting
actually
files,
remove it.
yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah. Some old
So,
spreadsheets.
That's right. You want to tidy up your disk and make sure you don't have them left there if you no longer need them.
Fine.
So we can go to the File menu again,
Yeah.
all right, and you'll see that there is actually a reference to delete here.
Straight on the menu.
Yeah. So I choose delete, and I'm being shown a whole range of options, and I'm just going to remove a file that I no longer require. So I have one here.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to click on this and say OK. It's going to ask me, am I sure?
Yeah.
So I can say yes. You'll see now it's no longer reflected in this list.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can close my box down.
That's nice. Yeah. Could you do multiples in that?
That's a good
Multiple
question.
deletes?
Shall we have a look?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Have you
shall
got
we...
plenty to delete?
We'll come and have a look. So let's take out yes, we take out a few
LMWK,
here.
yeah.
So we'll see this one, and I'm using my control key again. We'll pick up this one. No. Do you see how it's preventing me?
Right,
And if I
yes.
try another key, so from a safety point of view, removing the files to Excel directly, we're taking them out one at a time.
One at a time.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
All right.
So that covers that section.
Ready to move on?
Great. Let's go on to the next section.
Let's take a look at how we can actually protect our data and our sheet from user error.
Good. Yeah.
In this particular example, you can see that we have someone's personal budget.
Right.
You can see the reference to the salary, tax rate, etc. If we zoom out and take a look at an overview, you'll see that this area, if I just click on these cells and we look up at the formula bar, you're happy that these are just values that have been entered.
Yeah, data
Right.
entered. Yeah.
And would you agree that this area here and here, or these areas, are likely to be the variable ones? We want to be able to
Absolutely,
come in
yes,
and
yes.
update the changes.
Yeah.
Whereas on the other hand, if we come and look at this side, can you see up in the formula bar that you actually have the calculations themselves?
Yeah.
And as I move down, if you watch the formula bar, can you see they're all being registered?
Yes.
Now that's the sort of information that I would want to prevent from being changed. Yeah?
Yeah.
And this is how we could go about approaching it. The first thing to do is to identify the variable cells, the cells that are likely to change, that we want the user to have access to. So we simply mark them up using the random selection again with the
Yes.
control key.
Yeah.
Yeah. We come up to the format menu, and there's a reference quite clearly to the cell protection.
Right.
Now the way this works is that initially every single cell in the sheet has the potential to be locked.
Yes.
Right? It works in conjunction with another command. So at the moment that second command hasn't been activated.
Yeah.
So that's why we haven't noticed any difference.
Okay.
But as part of its format it is locked, so I must take that off.
Right. So
Okay.
those are going to be free.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I say OK to that. Now, what I want to be able to do is tell Excel that I want to activate the locked attribute in all the other cells in that sheet.
Right.
So I come up to the Options menu, and I actually say I want to protect the document.
Right.
Now this gives me 2 stages of security. I can actually input a password here, and the way the password will work is that only that person who knows this piece of information will be able to remove the protection. It doesn't prevent access to the sheet.
Oh,
It gives
great,
the
yes.
administrator control over who actually
This is a
can
protect
remove.
password.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. The other references here is what elements within the sheet do you actually want to protect in this fashion. So you can see that the reference to the cell contents and any
Right.
graphical objects that we have is switched on. There's also a reference to the window itself, and that one I'd like to come back to in a moment, if I
Sure.
may, once we've completed
Yeah.
this process. So if I say OK,
Yeah.
all right. Now what you should find is that I can come and sit here in my input cell and we
Right.
change the salary. So we go up to 19,000, and if you look on the right hand side when I enter this in, you'll see that
That it
everything
all
changes
changes,
beautifully. However, if I am to come over here, say by accident, and I start to type, did you see? I went one step further, but if we come out of the help,
Yeah.
just close it down. I pressed another key there. There is the box that comes up and says you can't change those cells because they're locked.
Great. Yeah. So I can't remove my formula.
So all the
By
formatting
mistake, yeah.
and the formulas are protected.
Good.
In addition, you'll see if we look up in the menus, can you see how the changed
it's been
options are
greyed.
actually greyed out?
Yeah. Yeah.
You happy with that? Any other questions there in that area?
No, I think that's fine.
So shall we go back just before we leave this topic and have a look at what happens if we actually protect the window?
Yes,
Yeah?
because sometimes I've used in my cash flows a little window at the bottom
All right.
for a checksum.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if we change the size, let's just pick up this particular window, all right? And you'll see now that it's got its own sizing buttons there. Perhaps I would like to keep this window in these particular dimensions.
Right.
So I can go back to options, and it's set to unprotect document at the moment because the last thing we did was to protect it. You're happy with
Right,
that?
yeah.
So it's not a problem. We just because we can't make any changes logically now because we've protected it.
Yes.
So we unprotect to start with, and we go back into options, choose the protect reference, and we can now make as many different choices as we like.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to reference the windows
Yes.
as well. Say OK. And do you see how the sizing buttons have actually now been removed from the top right area?
Right.
So this window is now frozen in this position and this dimension.
Yep. That's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's how we can actually protect the contents of the sheet and the dimensions of the sheet. But how about protecting the access, file access? What level of security do we have available in Excel?
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So if we have sensitive information that
Yeah.
we want to protect. If I go to the File menu, I can choose my Save As. Now, we're not going to change the file name itself, but we want access to options about the way we save that information. So I'm going to click on the button. Now, you'll see that there are a variety of choices in here.
All right.
So let's
I
just
see,
run
yes.
through
Yeah.
each of the options. Are you comfortable with the reference to creating a backup file?
Presumably that gives an automatic extra file, does it?
That's right, which
Yeah.
will store the last version of your
Yeah.
working file. So if you need to refer back to a previous version, you have it there.
That's useful, yeah.
Here we have the file sharing protection password. So if I enter a password in this particular box, only myself or any other person who knows that password will actually be able to load it. All right, so shall we type one in here? Notice how it's actually obscured from view
yeah.
from the word go.
Right.
So it's the highest level of security.
Yes.
We're not actually going to use this one, but let me explain its purpose. We have a choice of a protection password which controls access to the file itself. Right reservation enables a user to open the file, but if there is this particular type of password applied, I will only be able to save changes if I know that password. So yes, I can
I
actually open the file, but dependent on whether I have access to this particular type of password,
Yeah. So
controls
no,
whether I
you can
change
look at
it.
the data, but you can't change it.
Quite right,
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay.
And I just suggest that we change the option on that particular file so it's read-only anyway.
Yes. Oh, I
Okay.
see, yeah, because those go together.
Yes, they complement each
Yeah.
other. So we'll stay with that password.
Yeah.
And we'll say OK to the option. And it's testing me. It wants to ensure that that password is just right. So I have to repeat the process. Now, if I don't get it right in exactly the same way, case, text string, then it will tell me. So I can say OK here. All right. Finish
Good.
the save. All right. Say yes, we do. Want to
Yeah.
replace the existing version. All right. Now, do you want to try it? Shall we put
better
it to
do
the
that.
test? So we'll go to the File menu and we'll close it down.
Yeah.
Now, the next time I want budget back, I'll pull it off the file list
Yes.
and it asks me for the password. All right.
Right.
So there you
Great. That's good.
go. All right. The
And then,
final area,
yeah.
yes, sorry Nigel, the final area was that you may want to actually hide a particular sheet from
Yes.
view. Now there's various reasons for wanting to do that. A, because perhaps it has sensitive information, or more likely some sort of program there to automate a manual routine, or because you have many sheets open and temporarily you just want to hide them from view. Yeah?
Yeah.
So let's go up to the window menu. And we can see that we have budget showing only at the moment.
Right.
Now I've actually protected that so I can't change its size or attributes. So we'll pull back one additional file. Let's pick up this one.
Okay.
All right. Now I may want to hide that from view.
Right.
Simply have to go to the window menu, choose hide. And if we look in the window menu now, to all intents and purposes, I only have that one file open.
Right.
So when I arrange it or move it, I'm only looking at the one.
I see.
When
Yeah.
I've finished working with that group of files, to bring it back into view, just unhide it. It
Right.
would show me a list of hidden sheets and I can choose which one I want to bring back.
I see.
So it's another way of being able to manage your multiple files in a very easy fashion.
In memory, yeah. Okay, so does that cover us?
Yes, that's that
Okay, let's move
particular
on to the next section.
In this particular section, I thought we'd take a look at range names, why you would use them, and how easy it is to create them.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first thing I wanted to explain is how someone could actually implement a range name into a sheet, how it can make their working task much easier. And probably one of the most frequently used areas of this particular name is the ability to move backwards and forwards quickly and easily inside the sheet.
So in a big spreadsheet, you can move from one
You
area
can
to
actually
another.
define different
Yeah.
regions,
Yeah.
exactly that.
Great.
So we can, when we're setting up the name, we could actually take the whole area. We can assign a name to this large block. We could just take a section,
Right.
or we could hone in on the particular group here. So,
Okay.
so which way would you like to approach
Let's
that?
just look at that small area.
Just take the small
Yeah.
section
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Just to show it.
Fine.
Show how to do it.
Well, the first step then is to do as we've done and identify the group of cells to which we wish to attach the name.
Yeah.
Then we come up to the formula menu and we say we want to define the name.
Right.
You'll notice if I just pick the box up and move it slightly to the right that it's suggesting the first label or text name that it finds in the block.
That's good.
All right?
Yes.
If I want to, I can change that. Do you want
Yeah.
to call it a particular name?
No, leave it like that.
Stay with
That's
the gross
great.
salary.
Yeah.
We can say OK. All right, that's all there is to setting up a name. So let's see how we can use it. If I want to go to that particular area, I will use my go to option. Now it's actually stored under the formula menu. You can see it has a quick key. So
Yes.
for speed, that's the way I'm going to use it.
Right.
All right, I'm going to use my F5 key. It registers the fact of my current cursor position and actually the name that I've just got,
Right.
I've just created. I can click and say OK, and it takes me straight back to that particular area.
And can you go back to where you were?
Yes,
Does
if
it
we
keep
use
that?
You can
Yeah.
see it's remembered your last position.
Right.
Yep, so
Yeah.
you could go back if you want to.
Yeah.
You're happy with that?
Yeah, that's excellent.
So in a
yes.
large sheet particularly,
Yeah.
it's invaluable.
So an accountant with his profit, loss, cash flow and balance sheet can have them
Certainly.
all named. Yeah.
Certainly.
I would have used that. I will use that.
All right. Now that's one example of why we should implement range names inside
Yeah.
our sheets to make life easier.
Good.
But there is another reason as well. Let me just explore this sheet more closely. If we look at these cell contents, so as I'm moving down, have a look at the formula bar.
Yes.
You would agree, Nigel, that those are just values that we've typed
Yeah.
in. And in actual fact, if we have an overview of the sheet, you'll see that these would be the variable elements. Do you agree
Yes.
this is what
Yeah.
we would want?
This is what we
yeah?
set up
We will
earlier.
be
Yeah.
changing, yeah. And on the right-hand side, as we've noticed before, we have the formulas
Yeah.
over here. Now, as I go down the formulas, just look in the formula bar again.
Yeah.
You'll
They're just by
recognise.
cell name, aren't
Yeah,
they?
they're just
Yeah.
using it. And in actual fact, let's go back and remind ourselves how these formulas will be put in. So I'm just going to delete this one
Right.
to give you an example. So I'm going to take this one out. If I'm going to put the formula in from scratch, I would say I'm starting the formula with an equals sign, use my point and click method of calculation and say, well, it's the gross salary figure.
Yeah.
And then to work it out on a monthly basis, I would divide it by 12
Right.
and enter it in.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be so much easier if I could actually say gross salary divided by 12? And when
yeah.
it came to supporting or editing the sheet, to be able to sit on this formula cell and see gross salary showing in the formula
Yeah,
bar.
it would.
Yeah?
Should we
Okay.
do that?
So the next stage then is to actually assign a name to each of the values.
Right.
Now we could use the method we looked at before, so select the area we're interested in, go up to the formula menu and choose define.
Yeah.
But then obviously we'd need to repeat that process for
Right.
each of the ranges. So instead we can actually mark up all the areas. If we just move down a little further, we'll mark up all the areas that we're interested in assigning names to. Yeah?
Sure, doing that all together.
And I'm using, yes, in one go
Great.
because of this random selection.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
And what Excel is actually going to do is to use the labels in the left-hand side of the selected area.
Right.
So we go to formula again, but this time we're actually going to ask to create the names.
Oh, I wondered what that was for.
Okay,
Yeah.
and do you see how it's saying, all right, well, the labels are in the left column
Yeah.
because of the way you've
Yeah.
selected. So I can say, okay.
Yeah.
And we'll just say yes,
Yes.
because we used this one before. Do you
Yeah.
remember?
Yes,
So
I
it's
do.
smart. It's checking the range name. It said you already used that once. Do you wish to redefine it? Well, yes,
Yeah.
we do. Okay.
Okay.
Now, just to prove that all those names have been set up, if I press the F5 key, can you see how now they've actually referenced
Right.
each of the labels?
Yes. And
Yeah.
they're put up in alphabetical order.
That's
Yeah.
right. You happy with that
Yeah.
so far?
Great.
So to date what we've done is created the name or the group of names that we require. If we could just zoom out, there's another nice piece of attention to detail now
Yes.
in Excel 4. Notice now when I sit on a cell that has a range name,
Ah.
you can actually see the name up where the cell address was.
Very nice.
Okay,
Yes.
so much easier to work
Yes,
with.
yes.
Much easier to work with. So we have the names. How do we actually insert those names inside the formula?
Yeah.
All right.
Glad to see that.
We use one more option within the formula range. We come up to formula, and you see that there is a third choice
Right.
there. We actually want Excel to apply the names that we've set up wherever those cells are referenced inside the formulas. Okay?
Ah. Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? You're
Yes.
happy with
Yeah,
that?
I think I know what's
So we
going to
choose
happen.
apply names. These are all the names already selected for us, so
Yes.
I'm just going to say OK. Now,
Yeah.
if we come across and we explore the formulas that we now have down the left-hand
Yes.
side,
So
do you
it's
see now?
much more meaningful
Yeah.
calculations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And one last item, if we could just zoom out for a second. Let's move down a little lower. If I now wanted to be able to use the range names inside a calculation, yes, let's
Yes.
remind you what we have there. See, we've got the gross salary.
Yes.
I can actually use that name. So I can go to formula, and what I want to do is paste one of the names into my sheet.
Yeah.
This shows me a list.
Yes.
That's the one I want. OK, and I'm going to divide that by 12. OK?
Fine. Yeah.
So we can use it for easy reference, we can actually use it for inputting the formulas themselves, and we can use the range names for quick and easy movement through a large sheet.
Yeah. And then we'd need to format that.
Certainly,
but,
yes. Yeah.
That's another thing. Yeah.
Yeah, OK.
That's great.
So we've used them, but what about removing the names that you no longer require?
Yes. We need to be able to do that.
OK. So again, you come back to the formula menu, and we choose Define Name. And we would actually click on the one that we wish to remove. Yes? So let's just say we want to remove the water. Notice how it shows you the cell that's being referenced, and I can just click on delete.
And
that name
goes.
no longer exists.
Right.
So it's that easy to remove them.
Excellent. What does it do with the formula? Does it put it back to...
That particular one wasn't actually referenced.
Okay. Yeah. Fine.
Okay.
Good. Does that cover?
Those are the areas we wanted to look at.
Let's go on to the next section.
Okay. Let's explore formulas and functions now in this particular section.
Fine.
All right? And by functions, I mean being able to work out averages. We've already seen, for example, the summation function.
Yes.
Very painless input because we've been using, if you remember, the auto sum button up in the toolbar.
Right.
And then if we come down and take a look, this is the sum function that's been automatically input for us.
Right.
But there's lots of other sort of calculations and formulas and analysis that we want to be able to carry out that don't necessarily include the sum function.
Yeah.
So how easy is it to do it? Down below the main data area, you can see that we've put in the headings average, highest and lowest. And what we'll do in this example is to work out for the different months those particular totals.
Right.
Yes,
okay.
you're happy with that?
Yeah.
Now this is how easy it is for the user to do it. Now obviously once I'm familiar with the function I could type it in straight away, but I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the formula paste function.
Yeah.
All right?
Okay, let's do that.
So the first thing is to have the cursor where you want to see the result, as always. Come up to the formula menu and choose paste function.
Yeah.
Now let's take a close look at this dialog box. Just like the numeric formats, the functions are now categorised in Excel 4. So as I move down, can you see that the choices are changing on the right-hand side?
Yes.
So it's much, much easier to locate.
Massive choice.
Yeah, and an easy way of referencing them. So we said that the one we were interested in was average.
Yeah.
So it's a statistical function.
Yeah.
There's the one that I want. Below the list, you can see it's actually showing me the syntax of that function.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to, I could paste the syntax in. In this instance, I don't feel I need to. So I'm just going to say OK. Now, if you look up in the formula bar, can you see that the function has been input for us?
Right.
And all that remains is to identify the values that we wish to average. And what could be easier than using the point and click method and simply indicating those values that we wish to average?
Yeah.
Do you see how the cell addresses have been placed inside the braces? Lovely. So if I enter it in by clicking on the go button, there's the answer.
There's my average.
Now obviously I would like to be able to work out the highest figure and the lowest figure as well. So let's come down into the next section and we can use it in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Up to formula, paste function. What we want to do is to find, in this one it will be the maximum.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I press the letter M. I can use to move down, they're always listed alphabetically.
Yes.
I could use the scroll bar, or a quick method, as I did, was to press the first letter.
Right.
Okay, which will take you to the first occurrence in the list. Right.
Okay.
So we say OK. Again, we can see the function, and we indicate the information that we're interested in, and we enter it in.
Good.
So you can see that we're building up the information that we have.
Makes sense.
All right. So the last one was to find the lowest.
Yeah.
And we can go back for the final time as I say, we could type this in once we're familiar with it.
Yes.
And let's use the quick method again. This time I'm interested in the minimum. Now I'll press the letter M. It takes me to the first occurrence. If I keep pressing, do you see how it moves us?
Yeah.
Moves us down the list.
Yeah,
So
good.
either way, the mouse or the quick key, and say OK,
Yeah.
and mark the area.
Good.
The moving marquee box enables you to see quite clearly that you've picked up the right information.
Yeah. And OK.
Great.
Good.
Now, what we want to be able to do really is to get the same information for May and June and the overall totals.
Right. Yes.
I don't know if you remember that we actually looked at this option
And
earlier
this was
on.
the autofill, was it?
Yeah. Now, we could use fills. Let me just remind you about the edit fill. May I just remind you on that option, because this is often useful too. I've marked the original information, plus I've marked the destination cells.
Yes.
Now I can come up to the edit menu and I can fill right. Do you remember we saw fill down?
Yes.
So different ways of doing it, but that's now transferred the information across.
Great. And we've got all the information now. Fantastic.
You happy with that?
Yes, very nice.
One other type of function, although we don't actually always need to use it, is the date.
Yes.
Often within a spreadsheet environment, users will associate the date function in order to be able to introduce a date. Now, if you remember, we were able to type these specific ones in our cells directly.
Yeah.
So if I click on here, I typed in April 92. This is the way it's being referenced in a default date format. However, we would use a function if we want to bring up the date right now, for example. So we use now. Are you familiar with the now function? Is that one you've used?
I like it, yes.
Right, okay.
And it's great for the fact that you've updated a spreadsheet on a particular date.
And you can see it reflected there.
That's right.
That's right. So once more, just to show how we can use the different categories, choose formula, paste function. This time it's the date information that we're interested in, so you can see that there's a whole range of associated date functions.
Right.
I'm interested in now, so just move down, there it is. And I can say OK, and I can enter it in. And there you have this particular type of display gives us both the date and the time, because if you've used it before, you'll be familiar that there are two segments to that particular function.
Okay.
However, I can change or choose how I have that date or time reflected by using my shortcut menu. Do you remember? We can come down and I choose number, and you can see now it's picked up that it's a date content, and perhaps I'd like to see it displayed like this and not worry about the time.
Right. That's better.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right, so different types of functions, all accessible through paste function.
Good.
Before we leave this area, there was one other related topic that I'd like to introduce, and that is something that's new to Excel 4, and it's called Analysis Tools. It's found under the Options menu, and it's called Analysis Tools. So what I would like to do is just to give you a brief demonstration over its functionality. We've picked up all our functions from the paste function box.
Right.
But Analysis Tools will enable us to utilize specific functions in a very easy way indeed. So let me just give you an example. I'm going to move down the sheet now, so let's move to a clear work area, and I'm going to put in some information down here. So my example is I want to work out a moving average.
Right.
In increments of 3, so
with
that I can,
new data.
Yes, new data, and I want to be able to detect any particular trends.
Right. Okay.
So let's start the data input, and that's because we had the last information that we had in this area was our date area. All right.
Right.
If we click on this, we can remove all the information as opposed to just the content.
Oh, this was when we were practicing. Yes. Okay.
So we should be able to type in our number now. And so we're all right, and we'll have an 11 in there, and then don't forget your autofill. Just to save time, I'm going to extend the range across. All right.
Fine.
So there's our test data, our sample data. Now what I'm suggesting to you, Nigel, is I want to be able to work out the moving average. I could do it through paste function, but look how easy it's going to be with this new Analysis Tools pack. I come up to the Options menu, choose Analysis Tools, and I am offered a series of exercises to do with functions. They're project oriented.
Yeah.
Now I wanted to choose the moving average. So again, I press the letter M on the keyboard and I say OK.
Right.
What the toolpath will do for us is prompt us every step of the way.
Right.
You're happy with what you're seeing?
Yes.
So it's asking me for the input range.
Yes.
In other words, what's the data that we're going to use? Yeah.
We'll use that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can extend across. You see, it
Yes.
doesn't matter. If you've marked the first time, you can remark. It's very, very
Yeah.
flexible. It's then going to ask us what the output range is.
Yes.
And if we could just zoom out again, it's probably easier to show this is where I would, this is where I would like to see my output range.
Right.
So this is
Yeah.
where the results are going to go.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the box, it gives me a choice on interval. Now I'm going to stay with the 3, but obviously we
Yes.
could change that. It also gives me the choice on, do I want the standard errors reported, or would I like to chart the output? So it's
Yeah.
very flexible. We'll just stay with these 3 entries for now, and I'm going to say OK. And can you see how it's now worked out the moving
Yes.
average for me?
Yeah.
If I come and sit on this cell, all it's actually done is input that same function that we could have pulled from the paste function
Right.
box,
Yeah.
but it's approached it in a much friendlier fashion.
Yes. And this is all part of the usability.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay. Does
You're
that
happy
cover
with
that lot?
That
Yeah.
covers your analysis tools.
Yes.
The other question that I'm often asked about is the difference between our absolute and relative options.
Yes, there's a point on those not applicable.
Oh, before we
That's
move on.
because there's no data available.
These are the
Yeah.
first 2 sections in
yeah.
the series. Quite
Yeah.
right, Nigel. Thank you for
Okay.
pointing that out.
Yeah.
All right, you're happy
Yes.
to move on?
Yeah.
Right, so just to finish off this topic, let's have a look at the differences between the absolute addresses, yes,
All right,
and
yes.
the relative addresses. Okay, and again, if I may, I'd like to use just some new data, so I'll scroll a little further down. In this instance, the data is going to move down column A. So again, for speed, I'll just enter the first 2. And then we'll use our fill option just to extend down. So this is going to be our information. And what I want to do in this cell is say that in here, we're going to have 10%. All
Yeah.
right? And next door, I'm actually going to want the result of each of those figures multiplied by 10%.
Yeah.
You're happy with the idea?
Yes, fine.
So I start the first one and I use my equals because it's a formula, and I say take the 10 and I'm going to multiply it by the 10%.
Yeah.
And I enter it in. Okay.
that's correct,
All
yeah.
right. If I want to see it in percentages later, we can change it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But just let's go with the result of the data. If I then say, based on what I've shown you already, well, that's great, but I want the same result for the other figures, marking the destination area, go to the edit menu and fill down, I suddenly get these zeros returned. All right, now let's see why. In that first cell, we have the A38, which is where the 10 is located, multiplied by the information in C38, which is where the 10% is.
Right.
Because it was a relative copy, in other words, the cell addresses are changing as they're copied down the column, it now says A39, which is where the 11 is located, but multiplied by C39, and obviously there's nothing,
There's nothing
in there.
Yeah.
So in this situation, we want to be able to fix the 10% in the formula, so as it's copied down, it stays static.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yes,
sense
absolutely.
to you?
Yes, yes.
And the way we do that is by making this address absolute.
Yeah.
Now, the way you denote an address as being absolute is by inserting a $sign in front of the column and in front of the row. But we
Right.
have a quick key that makes it much, much easier. And as long as the cursor is inside that cell address, by pressing F4, the $signs will be added automatically.
Right.
All right? So we can enter that into the cell. Now all that remains is to remark the area, use our edit, and we're going to fill down again. Now we get the result, and the reason we get the result is as we move down those cells, can you see how it's always referring to the C38 as we move down.
And the other way we saw earlier was using a named cell, which is effectively an absolute.
Because you can also, that's quite right,
And maybe
remember,
an easier way for people to use.
with the budget sheet, quite right.
Great.
Any other questions you'd like to ask?
No, I think that's fine.
So you're ready to move on?
Yes, let's
Okay.
do the next section.
In this next section, Nigel, I wanted to show you how easy it is to work with related files and the sort of examples that we may want to use which will require related files. I'm sure you
Right.
have some examples of wanting to be able to consolidate your sheets, for example.
Yes, profit and loss, cash flow, balance sheet, to be able to consolidate them all instead of having them sprinkled around. Yeah.
Great. So we can bear that in mind
Yes,
when we look
sure.
at this next section. So firstly, let's open up the files that we want to work with. So I can
Right.
click on my Open button. Remembering that I can pick up more than one file at a time, we'll start with Console. And notice the extension on the end, the XLW.
Right.
This stands for brand new file format within XL4, which is called a workbook. And I'm just going to explain a
Right.
little more about that in a moment.
Good.
We'll pick up East, which we see as a 1, 2, 3 file, and we'll pick up West.
Okay.
Yeah. In comes the information.
Right.
Now you'll see obviously that we have a series of sheets. They're all stacked neatly so that we can look at them. But if we could zoom out for a moment, there are a couple of items I'd like to draw to your attention. Let's bring this one to the front. Firstly, you'll notice that we can see the desktop behind our sheets. So this area here is representing the desktop. And we now have the ability inside XL4 to be able to iconize or minimize the sheets that we're not using at this particular moment.
Incredible.
So here we can
Yes.
see totals. You like the idea
I
of
do.
that?
Yes. Yeah.
Let's just remind ourselves how easy it is to minimise a sheet in this fashion. If we take an overview of the layout and we want to minimise South, do you remember the two buttons here?
Yes.
This was our zoom facility. Well, I just want to click on its partner, which is the minimise option.
Right.
And here you can see is my particular sheet just tucked away until I want to work with it again.
Great. Yeah.
To bring it
Yeah.
back, it's just as easy. We can double click
And up it comes.
and we can work with it. All right. There's
Good.
another icon here that's new as well, and this is the workbook that I was referring to.
Right.
Okay, we could draw an analogy here perhaps with the folder that we might put all our important papers in before we go to a meeting. We can bind the information inside the folder, and then when we need to move the information or copy it, we're only handling one file as
Right.
opposed to all the numerous pieces
So
of
putting all the
information.
important stuff together, basically.
Just that,
Yeah.
just that. So let's open it up and take a closer look.
Right.
And we can simply double click.
Yeah.
And here it is. Now, at the beginning of all workbooks, we have like a table of contents, if you like, and it's actually showing us currently which sheets we already have involved.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And we have our command buttons at the bottom here. Now, these buttons, can you see them? The three
Yes.
buttons at the bottom right, these are our navigation buttons. So if I click on this button, it will actually toggle me through inside this window the sheets that I have bound. Can you see?
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
If I want to go back to my table of contents, then I could just click on this button here.
Right.
We're already there, but this is the
Yeah.
button I would
Yeah.
use. You're happy with that concept?
Yes, that's very neat.
Okay. Let's have a look at how easy it is to add then. If we could
Okay.
zoom out, what I actually want to do is, let's bring East to the front. I'd like to add this sheet to my workbook. So I simply select it by clicking on that button above the 1 and to the left of the A and
Right.
drag. Notice how the icon changes and drop. And I now have another sheet inside my workbook.
That's incredible.
Shall we do it with
Just
Wes?
as easy as that.
It's
yeah.
as easy
Yeah.
as that. This
Yeah.
was a 1, 2, 3 file,
Right.
but obviously if we want to bring in an Excel sheet, we can do it
the
in
same.
exactly the same way.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay,
That's super.
great.
Yeah.
The workbook contents page also helps us control the order in which we see the information. So I might decide that I wanted East sitting underneath an all, so we can just shuffle the information around into the position
drag and
that
drop
we require.
again.
That's
Yeah.
it. It's
Super.
used a lot,
Yeah.
used a lot. You'll also notice that at the top here, this particular sheet has a long, comprehensive name.
Yes.
So we actually have the ability now to overcome the limitation of the 8 characters, so we can give it a more meaningful title.
Yeah.
So how do we do
Yeah.
that? Well, I can use my shortcut menu here, pop into Options, let's pick this box up, and type in the name. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this also raises another interesting point that I'd like to cover at this stage, is that your sheets can be bound in 2 ways in the workbook. You can see here quite clearly that this particular sheet will be registered as a bound piece of information.
Yes.
What that means is that we actually have taken a graphical representation of our original data and we've bound it inside the workbook. There's no connection between the original file and this particular sheet.
Right.
We've actually taken a copy and stored it because obviously in this situation we want to keep all the related information together.
Yeah.
Are you happy
Okay,
with
so
that?
that's a separate copy put into the workbook.
For ease of use,
Yeah.
so that everything's stored together. However, it's flexible, and if we choose to save it as a separate file,
Yeah.
it will be registered as unbound, and this means that we actually have the file in its entirety with its original MS-DOS name of the 8 characters, and that we are actually looking at that original file. Now, the benefit to the user is that they can reference that same file in multiple workbooks if they need to.
Yeah, I see. So that way it's in several workbooks and you can update it once in the middle and all of them are updated.
Exactly that.
That's
precisely.
fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
All right. Let's keep this one bound
Yeah.
and say OK, and now you can see the name quite clearly.
Yeah.
If later I decide to unbind, then simply by pointing and clicking, we now have a different icon, and this one shows us that the file is unbound. And we will be asked when we exit to restore the name to the 8 characters
Right, yeah.
or
Okay.
less.
Yeah, got that.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
So that's the idea, the concept of the workbook, being able to manage effectively related files.
Yeah.
Let's move on now and look at one of the most commonly used procedures that would require us to work in this way, and that's the consolidation that you mentioned earlier
Yes.
on. Okay?
Okay.
So if we could zoom out, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to open up Total Spreadsheet, and to keep it in a separate window, I'm going to hold the Control key down when I double click. This means that I can actually still see my contents,
Right.
and I can see the Total Spreadsheet.
So you're seeing the two separately?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You're happy with that? All right. Now, the method of consolidation that I would like to show today is the intelligent consolidation. Right? And just to show you all the benefits that we can reap from this method of consolidation, I'm going to clear out this information.
Right.
Yeah? Okay. So we are starting with a sheet that's obviously been formatted, so it looks good.
Yes.
But no information.
Yeah.
And if we could zoom out, let me explain how we're going to do this. All right. And we have 2 sheets inside the workbook. We've got the northern region. And you're happy that we've got 1991 to 93 across the top, and the categories. Again, we've come back to this idea of the tour package company.
Yes.
So we've got our categories here. And if we come down to the sheet at the bottom right, lovely, you can actually see the information there. Now, what I want to be able to do to prove that the intelligent consolidation will enable us to pull similar information from separate sheets and analyse it.
Yes.
And even analyse the information if there is unique data in either of the sheets. I'm just going to make some changes. All right?
Okay.
So I'm going to delete the Gulf area.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to move Safari to here. All right, I'm going to put in a new category, skiing.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we'll just put in some information. I'll change the format as I go through, so I'll just punch in some figures here. Okay, and then what we'll do, remember we've got our shortcut menus to choose our numeric format. So there it is, and we're going to take off our bold. So
Right.
there's the information.
Mm-hmm.
You're happy with what we're seeing?
Okay, so
So there
we
is-
made it so that it doesn't match, basically.
Exactly that. So if we can zoom out, all I have to do is be positioned in my destination sheet. All right, that's the first prerequisite. And then I'm going to go up to the data menu and I'm going to choose consolidate, because obviously
Yes.
that's what we want to do. And if we can zoom out, that's grand. Okay. Inside the consolidation box, we can actually choose what sort of analysis we need to carry out as we're combining the information.
A lot of variations, yes.
So we could
Yeah.
average if we needed
Yeah.
to, or find the highest figure.
Right, yes.
But remember, we found that sum was the function used most frequently, so
Yeah.
that one's been
So
left at
let's
the top.
stick
And
with
we'll
that,
stay with
yes.
that one.
Yeah.
These are our presentation files, so this is something we did a little earlier, and you can actually see references to the other files that we wish to pull information from. And I'm going to
Right.
show you how these entries were made.
Right.
You're
Okay.
happy with that?
Yeah.
The key to the success is that we are going to use, or Excel is going to use, the labels that it finds in the top row and the left column of each of the selected areas. And these are range names that have been used. Do you remember we looked at the range names earlier on?
Yeah.
So all I need to do then is, if we zoom out, in this particular example, I'm going to use my point and click,
Yes.
and I'm going to activate the southern sheet.
Yes.
Yep. And I'm simply going to show Excel that it's this area that
Yeah.
I'm interested in.
Right.
And this is where it's going to look for the labels in the top row and the left column of the data that I've selected, and match that information up in all the other sheets that were referenced in the box.
Good.
Are you
Yeah.
comfortable with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
great.
like that.
So having marked that area, we can come back to our consolidate box.
Yeah.
And what we also want to do is create links to the source in this
Yes.
instance, so that we'll be able to go back afterwards and see how we arrived at those consolidated
Okay.
figures.
Yeah.
So we'll say OK, and in comes the information. So if I just open it up a little for us, and we can see what we're working with.
Yeah.
So you're happy with what we've got?
Right.
Let me just extend that. Notice it saved us having to key in the headings.
Yeah.
We didn't
It's
have
brought
to do
in
that.
all the stuff across the top and down the left-hand side.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it has also added something automatically for us, which is called outlining. Now, this was introduced with Excel 3.
Yes.
Excel has added this for us automatically, and the idea is that we are looking at the summary information currently. However, if I want to be able to backtrack and take a closer look at tennis, for example, and say, well, how are these consolidated totals arrived at? By pointing and clicking on the plus and just adjusting the column width with auto fit, I can now track quite clearly.
Exactly where it's come from.
Yes.
That's amazing.
There's just,
Very clear.
and you think you can,
Yeah.
and in your examples, can you see
I
how
think
that
I
would?
can use that.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
great. One last item. If I need to make a change, there is actually now a link established. Remember we said we wanted
Yes.
links? So let's say I want to change. If we stay, we are focused on this area of the screen, so you can see clearly. I want to be able to change that southern figure.
Yeah.
By double clicking, it's actually going to find the original sheet for me.
Yeah.
It's going to show me the original figure. And if I make a change here and enter it in, not only does it update the information here as you would expect, but you'll see we've had a ripple effect and we have the changes here.
Amazing. That's really good.
So that's
Yeah.
what we mean by intelligent consolidation.
It's pretty intelligent.
Okay. Are you
Good.
happy to move on and have a look at the what-if analysis?
Yes.
Good?
What
Yeah.
if?
Okay. Let's introduce a new sheet at this stage. I'm just checking in the window menu to make sure I don't already have it. And we can see budget is the one I'm after, and I'm happy I don't already have it
Right,
open.
okay.
All right, so I'm going to come across and I'm going to click on my open button, and I'm just going to pick up the budget sheet.
Right.
Now remember, earlier on in the video,
You
we
put a
put a
password
password
on
on
it.
it.
Can you remember it?
Yes, we can enter it in. and I now have access to that information.
Good.
All right, let's just optimize it. Okay, so we now can see clearly. The idea of what-if analysis is not something new to spreadsheets. The ability to be able to change variable pieces of information and affect other areas of the sheet is something that we've always wanted to be able to use. What you're about to see is completely new, and it's the ability to change multiple variables within the same sheet.
Right.
All right,
okay.
so this is an area that's very close to all our hearts, I'm sure. So what we're going to do is take a look at how we can say, well, what happens if the tax rate goes up or down?
Yeah.
How's it going to affect
Right.
the rest of the information? So as with assigning names, we're going to approach it in a similar way, and we're actually going to say which items will change. So are you in agreement?
Yeah,
It will
fine.
probably
Yeah.
be these areas here.
Yes.
So the first step, okay,
Yeah,
the
carry
first
on, yeah.
step is that we're going to assign the range names. So
Yeah.
if we could perhaps just zoom out for a second. Remember, we've got this random selection. Okay, so it's quick and easy. These are the areas that I wish to assign the names to, and I'm going to use the names that we have here.
Right.
I'm going to go up to the formula menu, say create names. It's saying left column, which is what I
Yes.
want, so I can say OK. Right. Now you'll see why we've done that in a
Yeah.
moment.
Okay.
I'm now ready to carry out my what-if analysis.
Yes.
So I come up to the formula menu, and what I'm asking for is the scenario manager, just tucked down here.
Which
okay?
is just off the back, yes.
Do you see?
Yeah,
You're
got
happy?
it.
Scenario manager, lovely. So I choose that one, and we're just coming to the focus there. Now what this dialog box is allowing us to see is that currently we have no scenarios defined, and what it needs to know is where are the variable cells located in the sheet. So quickly and easily, by using the random selection again, can you see how it's
Yes.
registering?
Oh, it's
I
putting them all in.
That's
yeah.
it. Pick up the areas that I'm interested in. I think telephone was the last one. That's
Yeah.
lovely. And I'm ready to add my scenarios.
Yeah.
And here comes the box. This is what the range names are used for.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
by assigning range names to each of the elements, it makes sense of what we're actually using. And I want my best scenario. Some audience participation
Right.
now. So let's pop in a salary. What salary should we have?
25,000.
Okay.
Personal allowance, 1,000.
Okay, sounding good. And
25%.
25%.
NI down to 7.
All right, we just move the mouse there so we can see all this good news.
Mortgage is fixed, I'm afraid.
Right.
Water, I'm afraid, is going to go up. There we are. Yeah.
Okay, should
Yeah,
we go up?
fine.
Should we just change it to 70?
Yes, okay.
All right. Now, when we make the changes and I say OK, all it's done at this stage is said, there's your first scenario.
Right.
Right. Shall we just pop it back in and we'll just put in a worse scenario so we can see how easy
Yes.
it is to move
See the
between
difference,
them?
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So we'll add one more and we'll say, right, this is the worst
Worst.
scenario. So,
17,500.
right.
Personal allowance goes down, doesn't it? 1,000. No.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Okay.
Tax rates up to 30.
Great.
NI with the Labour government, 12.
All right.
Okay, that'll
and
do.
we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
And we say OK. And now we can see that we actually have the two scenarios, and we could carry on building up the picture like this. We can see the moving marquee lines at the moment, so that just lets us see that those are the variables. And we're now able to move backwards and forwards between these two choices. So if I say, OK, show me the best scenario, if we could zoom out, and I'll just move my box here, can you see how it's updated the information and it's changed the figures?
Oh, that's amazing, yes.
Can you see that?
Yes,
And if we
yes.
stay on this view and I say, all right, well, hit me with the worst scenario and let's see how that's going to affect
Yeah,
the settings. Do you see now clearly again how it ripples
Yes,
through? And
yeah.
all of this information is stored in the one file
that's all together.
altogether.
Yeah.
And if I want to
That's
be able...
very powerful.
And you see a use for that?
Yes, yeah. I do indeed, yeah.
Very briefly, I then might want a summary report.
Yes,
So I can click on the summary button.
yeah.
and it's going to say, are there any particular cells that you're interested in if all of these change? And I'm probably going to be interested, if we can move to the right slightly, I'm going to be interested in what happens to my net income. And I'm going to come further down, and my spending money, because that's really going to be crucial. Okay. And here is the summary report. Would you like to zoom in? And you can see that it's picked up all the elements, and it's showing me both the best scenario, and if we come across to the right we can see the worst scenario. And if we come a little lower down, you'll actually be able to see the items here. And this is actually going to be our net income and our spending money. And this is what you will see if you don't assign your range names. So I think you'll agree that adding the range name is a worthwhile first step.
Very good. Like that.
Good. Okay.
So how are we doing?
The only other item perhaps that will be of use for auditing purposes in this section on analysis are the notes.
Quick look at that.
If we come back and we choose budget again. Notes are very useful if you wish to audit your sheet. And if we're just going to stay with this particular area, let's pick up on the tax rate. And I want to be able to add a note to this figure, either to share with a colleague when they're referencing it, or because I'm going to audit it myself. Go to Formula, choose Note. Here's the note box. This is the cell I wish to attach the note to, and this is where I can actually type in the text. So let's say that this is going to be subject to the next budget. Say OK, and when I move away from the cell, we know we have a note attached because of the red dot at the top right.
Yes, I see it.
And if we want to go back and have a look, simply by double-clicking, we reactivate that box.
Excellent. So that covers it.
It certainly does.
Let's move on to the next section.
Okay. How about charts, Nigel? Do you need charts?
Very important.
Very important. Being able to communicate that information clearly. Now what we're going to see here is something that's brand new to Excel 4, and that's the idea of a charting wizard. All I'm going to have to do is specify the data I wish to chart, and the wizard is then going to step me through the rest of the options.
That sounds like I would like it.
Okay. So what I'm going to do firstly is to locate the button on the toolbar. We'll find it on the right-hand side of the toolbar, and you can see it here. Do you see how we have the wand with the pixie dust sitting over the chart? By clicking on that, the mouse changes to the drawing cursor that we've seen before. Now what I want to do is just get an overview again, because I'm going to scroll down, and the first thing I need to do is indicate the size and the dimension my chart's going to take. Okay, so we'll leave it about there. And now the wizard starts to work. And it says that there are 5 steps.
Let's see that. That's it.
Can you see clearly?
Good. That's good.
There are 5 steps, and what it needs to know first of all is which data in the sheet are we going to chart. Now again, these boxes can be moved easily, and the area that I'm interested in is going to be this range here. You happy with that? And then I'm ready to go on to the next step.
Okay, bring it up a touch.
There. Okay. Now we can see the range of charts that we have available. There are 3 new chart types inside Excel 4. Our 3D bar, our 3D surface, and our radar. The one I'd like to work with today is just a 3D column. So we choose the one we want, go on to the next stage, and it says, OK, fine.
Which type of 3D?
Which type would you like? So which one should we go for, Nigel?
Number 6.
Grand. And on to the next stage. So far, this is what we're looking at. This is the way it's going to be presented when we finish, but there are some other touches that we need to add to it. One of the areas that lots of users want to be able to do is easily manipulate whether the data is actually being shown in rows or columns. Now here I can see that to have it in columns would be a lot clearer the way it is at the moment. So if I want to change my data series, Easy. Just point and click on what you want. Let's go on to the next stage. And it's now giving me the opportunity to add a legend. Are you happy about the idea of a legend?
Well, a title or something
Yes,
like
there's
that?
a key. If we just have a quick look, I'll say yes. You'll see it's actually giving us a key to the different ranges. So because we have the headings here in this example, don't really need it.
Okay.
But what we should have is a title.
The title.
Yeah, so shall we call it Financial Report. And you can see the changes.
Yes.
All right. The size will change in relationship to the size of the heading, but we can adjust this when we've got the end result. That's fine. So we say OK.
And that's it.
And there's our chart. And notice how the charting toolbar is automatically activated so that we're ready to go in and start fine-tuning.
That's it.
Easy.
That's super. Let's go on to the next section.
OK. Right, we've just seen how easy it was to generate the chart to start with. So let's move on and see what sort of changes we can make to customize it.
Okay.
All right, we already mentioned that the toolbar, the charting toolbar, is automatically created for us. So if I wanted to be able to change the different types of chart that I have, I can. Let's take a closer look. We're going to open up the chart by double-clicking on it.
Yeah.
All right, and now we'll be able to change the different sorts of formats. We can change the fonts. So if we can locate the toolbar, and we can just ask to see different types.
Oh, I see.
Quickly and easily. You're happy with this? So it's a very quick and easy way of moving through the gallery once we've made a decision.
Right.
Right? So we can use the toolbar for this purpose. If we can come back up again, I may want to change the heading.
Yes.
So by using the shortcut menu, you can see we now have references to patterns and font. So if I choose the font option, and I can actually then choose maybe a different size of font. Yeah. Again, I have the sample. We've seen this box before. All right. So I'm happy with that.
Of this.
And say OK. All right.
And that looks different.
If I want to be able to change the bars themselves, I can by using the shortcut menu again. I could come into patterns and I could decide that perhaps I was going to put a pattern in here. All right, and we can scroll down. Let's just pick this box up for a second. So if I want to be able to choose a pattern, let's have a snazzy pattern type. Okay, so it's very, very quick and easy way of being able to change the way your chart looks. With this sort of chart, with a 3D chart, you may also want the freedom to be able to decide which angle you look at the information from. And we now have something in Excel 4 called the 3D rotator. By clicking at the point where the axes meet, can you see how we have these black handles? I'm now actually able to directly manipulate the information on the screen.
Oh, that's great.
And if I hold my control key down, I'm also able to get a feel for where the bars will be. So if I wanted to turn my data on its head, I would be able to do so. All right, so it's just a quick example.
Yeah.
Good. Great.
Yeah.
So you're happy with that?
Yes.
The only other thing perhaps to mention is that we do have the ability to rotate our text. If we wanted to see the text shown in a slightly different way, if we could just move up slightly, I think perhaps we'd be able to zoom out. If I use my shortcut options here, you see that we actually have a reference to text, and here is where the rotation is stored.
Right.
So if I decided that I actually wanted to see my text displayed in a different way, perhaps like this, you can see it adjusted.
That's good.
Well, it's entirely up to you how you would like to do it, but you have that facility now.
Yeah.
Lovely. So if we get an overview of the chart we've created, the only other thing that may concern us right now is how can we control the size? Well, if we come out of the chart itself, and I'm using the hyphen here, remember your control menu, and close.
Yeah.
Now I am looking, if we zoom out, at the chart,
Yeah.
and notice it has those sizing handles that we saw on our
I see.
graphic objects that we
Yes.
created with
Yes.
the drawing tools. So if I want to be able to change the size, yeah, and move,
Yeah.
it's very, very easy to do so.
So I can do exactly what I
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, Nigel. You happy
That
with
was,
your charts?
oh, that was great. Very easy.
Good.
Yeah. So
Okay.
let's go on to the next section.
Surely. Okay, Nigel, well, the one area that we haven't really focused on so far in the video is printout.
Right.
How do we go about outputting the information that we've generated
Very
inside
important.
Excel?
Okay.
Good. Right. I've taken some of the data that we worked with earlier on in the video, and what I'd like to show at this stage is how we can choose how much of the sheet we actually print out.
Right.
If we go to print right now, we could simply click on this button and send straight to the printer, and Excel would print out everything. All right?
The whole of that sheet.
The whole of the sheet.
Yeah.
If I want to be selective, then I simply have to show Excel which area I want to print.
Good.
For example, if it was just the April information, I
Yeah.
can simply highlight that area,
Yes.
go up to the options menu and say I want to set the print area.
Right.
If I move my cursor down now and click away, can you see how it's put in the page breaks, if you like?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
only this section will actually print.
Great. Yeah.
All right? If I want to redefine the print area, then I can simply remark the information I'm interested in, go up to the options menu and set the print area again. And if we zoom out, I think you see clearly it's now altered where the page breaks
Great.
come.
Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah. And getting rid of that?
Right, that's a good question. Something that is, it will be a good point now to mention, is that when we define the print area in this fashion, Excel automatically creates a range name for us for ease of use. We haven't
Right.
had to define it,
Yeah.
Excel's done it for us. So for example, if I'm down here and I want to go back to the print area, by using my F5 go-to key, we can see it's referencing print area,
Right.
and I can simply click and say OK, and it says, right, here's the area that you've
Right.
selected to
Yeah.
print.
Okay.
Now, if I wish to remove the print area altogether, then I simply delete the range name,
Yeah.
as we saw earlier. So I come up to Formula, choose Define Name, click on Print Area,
Yeah.
and say I want to delete it.
Very simple.
Close it down.
Yeah.
We now have no print area defined, and so when we go to print, simply by clicking on this button, it will actually send the whole of the information through.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, that's
Okay.
fine.
So what other concerns do you have, Nigel, when you're printing out?
Well, one needs to set up the special parts of the page.
Like your margins?
Yes, that
Yes?
sort of thing, yeah.
Okay. If we go to the File menu, we actually have a page setup option.
Right.
And inside this dialog box, can you see
Yeah, a
fine?
lot
That's
of
good.
information.
A lot
Yeah.
of information. For example, changing the orientation.
Yeah.
We'll leave it on portrait at the moment,
Yes,
because
sure.
that's probably the most commonly used to start with.
We'll pick out the important bits of
And
here. Yeah.
surely, and I'll take any
Leave the
questions
rest,
if you
yeah,
have any.
yeah.
In here we can change our page size if we need to.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and margins, which we mentioned just now, I can actually just type in, remember typing replaces
Yeah.
the selected area, and by using the tab key change that to an inch as well.
Fine.
All
yeah.
right.
Okay.
The other area to draw your attention to is that if we had a particularly large section of data to print, we'd want Excel to fit it to the page.
Yes.
And we can actually specify how many pages to fit it to. So if we haven't set a print area, we want to send the whole lot, but we want to ensure it's a good sized font and it
Yeah.
shows clearly. We could say, for example, fit to 2 pages wide by 2 pages tall.
Right.
And if there's a lot of
and
data...
then it's all scale to fit.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Great.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So we know we don't have a great
Yeah.
deal of data, so we'll leave it there. How about your page numbers? Do you put page numbers in your
Yes,
report?
I like page numbers.
Let's have a quick
Yeah.
look at headers and footers then.
Right.
Right? If we go to the footer first, the reason I'm taking you here is that as a default, Excel will actually put the page number in for us.
Great, so I don't have to think about that.
No, you don't.
If I want to move it, then I can deal with it.
Yes,
Yeah.
or you can
Okay.
take it out completely. All right. So if we just cancel from there, let's have a look in the header.
Yeah.
Again, the layout is very similar. This time it will offer me the file name by default.
Right.
But let's say I would actually like in here to put in financial report.
Yeah.
If I want to be able to control my font size, to recognise your A button from
yes,
the toolbar, yes,
yes.
looks familiar. So we can just point and click and we get access to the same font dialog box that we've been working with inside the sheet.
Yeah.
And again,
So
I
we're
won't,
familiar with
yes,
that.
I won't make
Yeah.
too many changes
Okay.
here. All right.
Great.
The other useful pieces of information that we can add, if I sit on the section, the purpose of these sections is to control the alignment. So we'll be aligned on the right-hand side of our data in this section, whereas we were centred over our data
Right.
before. All
Okay.
right? And I might want to add the date.
Yes.
So if we just come in a little closer, can you see the icon there?
Yes.
So there's the
Yes.
calendar. And if I pull the box across, we can see the code that's being
Right,
entered.
dates in there.
And I might also want the time.
Okay,
All
Yeah.
right? And say OK.
fine.
And come out again from here. Now, it would be marvellous, wouldn't it, if we could actually see what we're asking the printer to give us before we send it to the printer. So if
That's nice.
Yeah, very useful facility. So if we
Okay.
come to the File menu, we're actually going to Print Preview it.
Right.
And this will enable us to see how the data is going to look on the page. Now, there's a couple of things. Firstly, I can change the margins from here if I want to. Do you remember I
Right.
set them to 1 inch?
Yes.
I might decide with this bird's eye view that I want to alter. Lovely. So can you see how that icon...
Yes, has changed.
Yeah.
And now you can pull it across.
Let go, and I've adjusted my left margin.
Great.
I can do exactly the same thing if I decide at this stage I want to alter my column widths.
Right.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
And I can see that you're looking at the screen and you want to look in more closely. So do you notice how the mouse has changed to a magnifying
Magnifying
glass?
glass, yes.
Simply by indicating the area I'm interested in and clicking, I've got my zoom facility.
Right,
So if we want
yes.
to get up close,
Now I can relax.
okay. All right. And we can zoom out again.
Yeah.
We have what's called an integrated print preview. So if there was anything in the setup at this stage I want to change, over and above the changes I've made now, we actually have a setup button.
Right. So you can click straight
Do you
into
recognise
that.
the
Yes,
box?
we've just looked at that.
And
That's
perhaps in
fine.
this
Yeah.
instance, I'm going to change it to landscape
Okay.
and ask for the data to be positioned centrally, both horizontally and vertically,
Yeah.
because it's a small amount of data
Yeah.
and I want it to look good.
Okay.
And there
There
you go.
it is.
And if we
Great.
just zoom out,
Yeah.
to send to print at this
Yeah.
stage, we can click on our print button here and we're able to choose if it was a number of pages. We can be selective and specify a range from 1 to 3. Okay, we can
Great.
also access page setup.
Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah. So
Right.
that covers it, yeah.
Lovely. The last two items I just wanted to introduce at this stage
Yes.
to do with the printer, because they are new to Excel 4, is the ability to store views
Yes.
and to actually control the printout.
Good.
And
Yeah.
for this, I'm going to work with a different sheet.
Yep.
Here, if we'd like to zoom out, we can see we have a lot of information. Yes, very full, busy sheet.
Yes.
Now, the idea of the view is that I can actually control how I look at the information. And we already have some set up. So
Right.
if I go to the window menu, I can click on the view option. And you see that we already have two set up.
Right.
We'll add one in a moment just so you
Yes.
can see how easy it is. But I might just want to see the summary of my sheet.
Yeah.
So I click on the one I want, click on show. All right, and if I zoom out, just come out and...
Now we've only got the main totals.
Exactly.
Oh, that's very useful.
Exactly.
Yes.
And if I then wanted to go back
Yeah.
and work with the detailed view,
Yeah. That's selected.
Show.
Yeah.
we'll see now if
And
I
back
move
to
down.
the detail.
All right.
got the lot.
So it's a very
Excellent.
useful way of controlling how you work with different sections of your sheet. A view is capable of storing not just your detailed or your summary layout, but also your page setup, how you want it arranged, and probably the most frequent request that we've had, the ability to store different print areas.
Yeah, I'll do that on my cash flow before I go home.
Great. Okay. So that's the idea of the view. I did promise I'd show you how we could actually create one.
Yes.
So to do this, I'm going to also mention zoom. Now, I want out of that entire sheet, I want to be able to just work with that focus on that section. So by going to the window menu once more, you'll see that we do have a zoom facility, which is to help us while we're working on the screen.
Right.
And I can decide to enhance the magnification or reduce it so I can see more.
Yeah.
I actually want to fit the selected area as best as possible to the screen.
Yeah.
And when I say OK, you see how it's actually enlarged the information for me.
Yeah.
All right, we're happy with that?
Yes.
Just click away so we can see what we've got.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
So if I want to save that, go to the window menu, choose view, say I want to add.
Yes.
All right, and give it a name.
So now you've got a special, an additional view.
Certainly,
Yeah.
and say
Great.
OK. And that's now been added. If we just come out, and just to show you, if we look in the view menu now, you see you now have our new view.
View. Okay.
So how do I put the whole thing together?
Yeah.
If we'd like to come and look at the file menu, and we see we have a reference to print report.
Right.
Now in here, all I'm going to do is show you how we work with it. We can actually put all the views and the scenarios that we've looked at together now. And if I click on the add button, I could type in new report.
Yeah.
We have an explanation here. And here I can choose in my first section which view, so I want the detailed view with, say, the worst scenario, and I add that, and that will print first, followed by the detailed view with, obviously, the best scenario, and add that. So it gives us complete control over the data.
Good.
That's
So
it.
that covers that. Let's go on to the next section.
I'm right with you.
Good.
In this section, Nigel, I'd like to handle some of the issues revolving around data manipulation.
Right.
Okay. Now, we can see in this particular file that it's laid out in a certain way, identified by what we would call in this situation as field titles.
Yes.
One item of information being described as a field.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a complete combination of items being referred to as a record.
Right.
So although Excel 4 is obviously a spreadsheeting program, we can actually manipulate the data within it in a database fashion. You're happy with that?
Yeah.
If we can just get a bird's eye view of the sheet, let's take a look at some of the issues associated with a large file.
Right.
As I scroll down, you'll find that I lose my headings, and also it's very difficult to detect any particular trends or fluctuation in the data. So we're going to have a look at how to address that. Let's come back up to the top. What I can actually do is freeze the title. Notice where my mouse is moving over to the top right, and you see the dark area, the band above my arrow, and how my mouse changes. What I can do is from this area, by clicking and dragging, I can position my split bar to determine where I want to halt the headings.
Yeah.
So you're happy the information is there.
Right.
We have two panes there.
Yes.
And now to freeze it, go back to the window menu and say I want to freeze my panes. Now, if we get an overview of the sheet again, as I scroll down, I can always tell which pieces of information
so
I'm
you
working
fixed your
with.
heading and everything's moving against it.
Exactly.
That's great.
All right.
Yeah.
However, we're still in the situation with so much data that it's difficult to analyse any particular fluctuation in the trend.
Right. Okay.
What I would like to do is just show you, this is what we want to be able to produce from that entire sheet.
Yeah.
We want to be able to produce a summary.
Yeah.
All right, so we're able to pick out the individual categories and total them.
Right. Okay.
Happy with that? Great.
Yeah.
Let's move on then. Let's go back to the original sheet. How do I go about setting this up? The first step is to let Excel know where the database is inside the sheet. So simply by using my auto selection, I can double click to select the area involved, go up to the data menu and say that I want to set the database.
Right.
You happy?
Yes.
Now, just as when we set the print area, we now have an automatic range name. So if I use my go-to key F5, there it references the database amongst the other areas I already had set.
Right.
I can double-click and it remembers the database area.
Good.
Fine.
Yeah.
Now, that's all I need to do before I generate my summary report.
Okay.
Okay. The next stage is to come to the data menu and say that I want to generate the crosstab. That's the term
Right.
used.
So that's the report.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. And you'll see that the first screen is
Yes.
very pictorial, very graphical. And if we look at the top, it's another wizard,
Oh,
just
great.
like the charting wizard we saw earlier
Yeah.
on. All right. Now, if I've never used a crosstab facility before, then just at the bottom here, if we come out slightly, we see we have an explain button. And if I click on this, I'm actually going to be given a definition of the crosstab itself, so the main
Right.
elements.
Okay. So let's have a look at that.
Let's go for it.
Yeah.
What I want to do then is to create a new crosstab.
Yeah.
It's going to prompt me for every piece of information it needs, and the first thing it wants to know is what am I going to see in the rows.
Yes.
Now, what I would like it to do is locate each of the tool packages.
Yes.
So I select tool
those.
package, add
Yeah.
it, and then I want it to go back and pick up the occurrences by region for each of those tool packages,
Okay.
so I can have a very detailed breakdown. All right?
So that's a break.
Fine. Now I want to go on to the next stage. So we see we have the easily visible button there. Go on to next stage.
Yeah.
And what I want to be able to do now is see the column layout. What's to go
Right.
in the column? Now usually that's going to be some indication of time.
Yeah.
So we'll choose the date field
Yes.
and we're going to add it.
Yeah.
But I also want more control. I want to control how the dates are grouped. So by clicking on the options button, what I want to be able to do now is decide that I'm going to pick up the dates in which way. And
Right.
here are the choices that I have, dependent
Okay.
on the information. And I wanted months.
Okay.
You happy with that,
Yes.
Nigel?
Yeah, sure.
So we've picked up that grouping and we can say OK. All right? And then we can go to the next stage. One of the most important areas, obviously, is the body or the centre of the section
Yes,
that we're going to
yeah,
work with. And
right.
I want to be able to analyse the revenue.
Right.
All right. So by clicking on the revenue, yeah, I'm then going to be able to add that. It appears in the value field, and I'm ready to move on now to my next option, and I want to create it.
Yeah.
At the bottom in the status bar, can you just see it's actually putting this table
reading that
together?
up. Yeah.
And it's taken all of the information just as I asked for it and placed it in a brand new sheet.
Right.
But let's make it easier to read, even easier. Notice the outlining symbols. Do you see
Yes.
the outlining symbols?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I want to be able to see a summary now,
Yes.
and maybe I use AutoFit, do you see how it's pulled out? Golf,
Oh,
safari and
yeah.
tennis. It's grouped by month, and if I
Yes.
want that little bit more detail, by expanding the information for golf, say, I now have a breakdown by region, so
Yeah.
I can see exactly what's happening. If we just want to make it that little more professional looking, don't forget you have your auto format button.
Yeah. Top left. Yeah.
And there you go.
Great. And then you can scan through that and make it look nice.
Yep,
Yeah.
I mean, if we wanted to reopen
Great.
the information, for example here, you now have a sheet that's very easy to read.
That's super.
Right. Let's go back for a moment and have a look at just how easy it is to actually add new records or edit existing records. For example, Nigel, you've worked with Excel
Yes.
3, so you'll recognise data form. It has a slightly new look to it, as do the other dialog boxes with this 3D display, but you can see that if we wanted to add a new record,
Yes.
we can key in the information. So I could put golf in here. We can come down, units 5 say. The price for this one, let's just put in 1,000, or I've got 10,000, that's good, I'm happy with that. Notice with revenue it's a protected field because there's a calculation, so this will be generated for me. Region we could put in, let's have Asia in there, and the date, let's put November. Alright?
Yeah.
So we've got that one in. If we want to be able to create the next one, then we can go on to the next one.
Okay, that's enough, I think.
Right, Nigel. Well, we've reached the last section in the video.
Good.
And in this module, what I'd like to cover is automation. How we can speed up our daily routines and make it much easier to carry out regular tasks. Have you worked with macros before?
No, I haven't, no.
Okay.
So what is a macro?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
A macro enables us to record a series of regularly used keystrokes or commands, and then we can play it back by a push of a button or a keystroke.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought for this example we'd work with the budget sheet that we'd created earlier, and if you remember, we had set up 2 scenarios through the scenario manager.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is record the process of asking to see both the best and the worst.
Yes.
We're going to attach those macros to 2 separate buttons and place those buttons inside our own toolbar, which we can call back on demand.
Great. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. The first stage will be to generate the toolbar that we want to use.
Right.
And I can do this by coming up to the standard toolbar using my shortcut menu and coming down to toolbars.
Right.
Here I can actually specify the name of my choice. I'm just going to call it mine.
Yeah.
All right? And then I'm going to add it.
Yes.
And you can see here is my toolbar set up and ready to go. It will actually increase in size as we add the buttons to it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, which buttons do I want to use? At the bottom, we have a custom option, and this shows us a selection of buttons that currently are not attached to any commands.
Okay.
So if I'm going to pick up the worst scenario, I've already recorded that one just so we can see how we attach the button. I can click on this chap, and what I'm going to do is drag him across and drop him onto my toolbar.
Great.
Okay?
Yeah.
By doing that, we've now evoked the assign to tool. And here is the macro that I'd already set up. We'll come back in a second and create one. So click on the one that I want and say OK. So we now have it there. That's it, assigned and set. So let's pick up another one, because we want the best one. So I'll take the smiley face, I think he's probably the best candidate, and drop him onto the toolbar again. Do you see how the toolbar actually increases in size? And we will be able to adjust the position in a second. What I want to be able to do now, though, is record the macro. And if we come and look at the right-hand side, you'll see we have a record button in this assign to tool dialog box. It will give me the opportunity to enter a name, so if I type in best here, I could also attach a keystroke if I wanted to, and decide whether this was to be globally available or stored in a specific sheet. And I'm going to put it in a specific sheet for now, and say OK. All right. Now what we have, let me just move this one across, is we have our stop button now, so when I finish the process, this is the button I will click on, and if we look at the bottom left of the screen, we'll actually see a flag that tells us we're currently recording, so everything I do now will be stored.
Good.
So I simply go up to the formula menu, say I want the scenario manager, pick up best, ask to show it, everything changes, and then close the scenario manager down. That's all I want this macro to remember, so now I can click on the stop button and you'll notice that the recording flag at the bottom of the screen has been removed.
Good.
Happy? Okay. Now with my toolbar, you know already that we can decide where the toolbar goes. Shall we actually have a look at docking it, attaching it to the bottom? Do you remember? So if I pick him up and drop it at the bottom here. There they are, side by side. And if we get an overview of the sheet now, let's see how well they work. So if I click on the worst scenario, Do you see how the figures change?
Yeah.
And I click on the smiley face.
The best.
I get the
And
best
so
scenario.
you can move between the two.
Very easy to do.
Great. Yeah.
Now, if I want to be able to choose as and when I see that toolbar, because I might
Right.
not want it there all the
Yeah.
time, we can actually hide it temporarily
Yes.
by pointing and clicking on the hyphen in the top left.
Yeah.
All right?
So it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's not going to be there unless I want it, and I can call it back in exactly the same way as any of the standard toolbars by coming up to one that's already there, using the shortcut menu, and mine is now clearly listed and can
Right.
be pulled into view as and when I need it.
Great. Yeah.
Okay,
So perhaps we should save those.
very important, very important. So let's have a look now at the way we can actually save it.
Yeah.
Firstly, we go to the window menu, and what I'm going to do is to store both these files inside a workgroup. The
Right.
sort of file that we looked at earlier on. It's important, obviously, to ensure that only the files that you want to work with are open. We're now going to pick up the macro sheet, and what we want to do is hide it so that
Yeah.
it's not going to be immediately on display. We'll just
Right.
tidy it up, tuck it away. We now want to save this combination of files in a workbook.
Yeah.
All right, and I'll call it, I'll give it my name, shall I?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
And say OK.
Good.
All right, we can now see the information. If we just click here, you can see that we have our sheet and we have the macro information.
Right. And we can call that back at any time.
Yes,
Good. Okay, so that's it.
that's the last section.
Fantastic. Great product, well presented, and I'm longing to get onto it on my laptop.
That's what I like to hear.
Fine. So, what can I say? I'm sure you've all enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next software learning video from Softvision, perhaps another Microsoft product. Okay?
Yeah.
Bye. So,